Good morning and welcome to the Landmarks Preservation Commission's public hearing and public meeting of Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. We'll begin this morning by taking attendance, and I'll ask our General Counsel, Mark Silverman, to call the roll.
Chair Carroll,
Here.
Vice Chair Bland,
Here.
Commissioner Chapin,
Here.
Commissioner Chen,
Yeah.
Commissioner Chu,
Here.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Here.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Jefferson, Commissioner Lutfi, Commissioner Master. He's here.
All right, good morning again and welcome to our public hearing and public meeting. We are holding this meeting in our hearing room in person at 1 Center Street on the 9th floor. We are also holding it via Zoom for anyone who would like to participate remotely. And it is also being live streamed on our YouTube channel. We are going to begin this morning with a public hearing for an item proposed for designation by the Research Department, and then we will move to the Preservation Department's public hearing agenda to review new applications for work on designated properties. And with that, I am pleased to turn it over to our Director of Research, Margaret Herman.
Thank you. Good morning. Item number 1 is LP 2684, the Modulightor Building Apartment Duplex, 246 East 58th Street, Manhattan, Block 1331, Lot 128. The item proposed for public hearing is the proposed designation of the Modulightor Building Apartment Duplex, a late modern work by Paul Rudolph built between 1989 and 1994, consisting of the entire 3rd and 4th floors, including the entrance hall, north and south living rooms, kitchen, balconies, bedrooms, and bathrooms, as well as the historic fixtures and components of these interlocking double-height spaces, which may include but are not limited to the floor surfaces, wall surfaces, ceiling surfaces, lighting fixtures, and attached furnishings. And presenting is Matt Postal.
Good morning. It's not moving. I did that.
Okay, so I think you use the arrows.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and then it should move. Okay.
The Modulightor Building's apartment duplex is an important late 20th century modern interior by the American architect Paul Rudolph. Located in Midtown Manhattan on the south side of East 58th Street near 3rd Avenue, the apartment duplex occupies the 3rd and 4th floor of the building, which was designated an individual landmark in 2023. The proposed interior landmark includes the entire 3rd and 4th floors, outlined in red, including the entrance hall, the north and south living rooms, 4 bedrooms, balconies, kitchen, and bathrooms. The Modulightor Building was constructed in phases, starting in 1993. Planned as twin rental apartments, the apartment duplex received a temporary certificate of occupancy in June 1994. These units were first leased to tenants in 1996. Following Rudolph's death in 1997 and the settling of his estate in 2001, his partner, Ernst Wagner, moved into the building, removing a wall to combine the north and south units into a single apartment that also functioned as headquarters of the newly established Paul Rudolph Foundation. Following a, quote, disagreement over the group's priorities, he founded the Paul Rudolph Heritage Foundation in 2014, which changed its name to the Paul Rudolph Institute for Modern Architecture in 2022. Rudolph purchased the property in February 1989. He and Wagner, who co-founded the Modulightor Lighting Company in 1976, developed a plan to rebuild the existing 1960s structure, which you see on the far left, as a sales showroom and residential space. Rudolph was a leading and sometimes controversial figure in American architecture during the latter half of the 20th century. He attended Auburn University and the Harvard Graduate School, where he developed a distinctive modern aesthetic using industrial materials like concrete and steel. Rudolph moved his thriving practice to Manhattan in the 1960s during the period when he headed the Yale School of Architecture, which he designed between 1958 and 1963. A prolific designer of exquisite private residences and major public buildings, he was also an inventive interior designer who created a significant group of multi-level spaces that were praised for their distinctive forms and daring spatial complexity. The all-white apartment duplex has a fragmented open plan divided by partial walls and partitions. Significant architectural features include the tile floors, 2 staircases, exposed metalwork, fireplaces, lighting fixtures, and built-in furniture. In a 2004 article titled "An Architect's Last Word," architect Joseph Giovanni wrote in the New York Times, "Inside and out, the triumph of the design is that Rudolph pulled off the kaleidoscopic complexity with wallboard and off-the-rack metal studs and joists. For Rudolph, the richness of the materials didn't matter. He aimed at the same spatial qualities regardless of materials. It was space itself, Rudolphian space, that counted." Traversed by floating open stairs that rise and turn, as well as cantilevered balconies and landings that project over the lower floor, New York Times critic Jason Farago wrote in 2018 that these elegant interlocking spaces provide, quote, they provide a corrective to the view of Rudolph as a brutalist heavyweight. A highly significant late work by Paul Rudolph, the Modulightor Building Apartment Duplex, is home to the Paul Rudolph Institute for Modern Architecture. Open to the public by appointment and through regularly scheduled open houses, this extraordinary space is the only publicly accessible interior by the architect in New York City.
Thank you, Matt. All right, before we move to testimony, I want to see if anyone has any questions. Yes, Vice Chair Bland.
Not a question. Well, it is a question. I just want to state at the outset, as I might have already, I just want to do it for emphasis. I became an architect because of Paul Rudolph. I went to study at Yale because of Paul Rudolph. Alas, he retired from being chair at Yale before I could study with him. So in no way is my question in anything other than hugely supportive of this application. On the other hand, aware that the clock tower of recent times was a problem when the building became privatized, completely privatized. And I just want to be sure that if as I hope we will, vote to make this a landmark, an interior landmark, that what assurances do we have that it can't be sold and made into a nice private apartment again, and therefore not eligible to be a landmark?
Right, and I'll let Mark answer that question.
Well, first of all, the issue about whether the Landmarks Commission has the power to require access was litigated in the clock tower case, and the court cleverly sort of jumped over that issue in that particular case. I would.
One reason I have to ask is because my firm was involved in it, and then I was recused from everything and know nothing of the results.
So but I think, but what is clear is that regardless of whether the it would be open, it would still be a designated interior landmark. So, and unlike the situation with the clock tower, where it was just one subtenant of a large building, this building, the entire building is owned by the Rudolph Foundation, and and it's functioning more like a house museum and foundation building. So I think the risk of it becoming privatized is far, far less.
But to be clear, even if something becomes privatized, it remains designated and under our jurisdiction.
Oh, really? Yes. Oh.
Okay. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay, let's move to public testimony. I don't have any sign-in sheets. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak on this item? Yes, please come up to. Yeah. You need to switch the mics.
And the vote. Daniel. Thank you. Oh.
Hi, good morning. My name's Kelvin Dickinson. I'm president of the Paul Rudolph Institute. Good morning. Chair Carroll and members of the commission, on behalf of the Paul Rudolph Institute for Modern Architecture and the Paul Rudolph Estate, I ask that you support the designation of Paul Rudolph's duplex with the Modulightor inside the Modulightor Building as a New York City interior landmark. Paul Rudolph was one of America's most celebrated architects of the 20th century. Trained at the Harvard School of Design, Rudolph was a second-generation modernist who had grew dissatisfied with the strict functional aesthetics of the international style, but remained committed to exploring industrial materials to create structures of great formal complexity. Since 1965, both his office and residence were located in New York City, and he designed several important projects across Manhattan, Queens, and the Bronx. The Modulightor Building, designated an individual landmark in 2023, is named after the lighting company created by Paul Rudolph in 1976. The Modulightor Building's reputation is in part due to the Rudolph-designed duplex apartment located within it. The duplex is a spacious two-story apartment, or more correctly, one floor and a mezzanine. Rudolph did not just do duplex apartments, however, with one floor just stacked over another. Instead, he thought in terms of spatial movement, the psychology of space, proportion, and balance, and used his knowledge and artistry to create an intricate multi-tiered space spiral of spaces. Rudolph said, "The movement of space has velocity, for space flows much in the manner of water from one volume to another. As one transitions from one level to another, the apartment has several of them. The width and height of the space keeps changing, adjusting in a series of movements of vertical and horizontal planes, creating a kinetic assemblage of spaces and multiple viewpoints. It feels dynamic and serene all at the same time." Following Rudolph's death, his partner Ernst Wagner moved into the duplex and began opening it to the public. The apartment is now used by the Paul Rudolph Institute to serve as a living example of Rudolph's skill to shape both interior and exterior space. This contribution to New York City's cultural life replicates Rudolph's original use of his 23 Beekman apartment as a place to meet and to discuss modern architecture. We urge the Commission to consider this historic location's architectural value and its special position as the only intact, accessible interior designed by Paul Rudolph in New York City. Sadly, the person who today meant the most to is no longer with us. Ernst Wagner passed away just before Christmas. But while he was in the hospital, I told him about the Commission's interest in this designation. He was happy and told me, quote, "I want our project to continue." We therefore ask that the duplex apartment within the Modulightor Building be designated a New York City interior landmark. Thank you on behalf of Ernst and the Paul Rudolph Institute for Modern Architecture for all your support of landmark preservation in New York City.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? All right, not seeing any hands, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen to see if we have any remote participants.
If any members joining us via Zoom would like to offer remote testimony, please use the raise hand function. Andrea Goldwyn, I will be promoting you to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute yourself and you will have 3 moments to speak. Please state your name for the record.
Good morning, Chair Carroll and Commissioners. I'm Andrea Goldwyn, speaking on behalf of the New York Landmarks Conservancy. The Conservancy is pleased to support designation of the third and fourth story duplex of the Modulightor Building as an interior landmark. The Modulightor Building is an extraordinary example of the work of architect Paul Rudolph. As other Rudolph buildings are lost, we're glad that in New York, the Landmarks Commission is recognizing this building first as an individual landmark and now for its remarkable interior. Rudolph employed simple materials and geometric patterns to create a unique and fascinating environment. The description for this designation ticks off the built elements, rooms, balconies, fixtures, and furnishings. It's a complex montage of dazzling white and clear surfaces and angles. Each piece contributes to the larger composition. They're all significant for themselves, but even more for the compelling spaces that Rudolph exposed within them. We appreciate the work of the Paul Rudolph Institute for Modern Architecture for honoring this space and making it available to the public. We thank the Commission for continuing to support Rudolph's legacy and urge a swift vote for designation. Thank you for the opportunity to express the Conservancy's views.
Thank you for your testimony. Next will be Lucy Levine.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. As the citywide advocate for New York's architectural, historical, and cultural neighborhoods, the Historic Districts Council supports the designation of the Modulightor Building Apartment Duplex as an interior landmark. The duplex was designed by the prominent American modernist Paul Rudolph and stands out as the only publicly accessible Rudolph interior in New York City. Rudolph believed that, quote, "Architecture is a personal effort, and the fewer people coming between you and your work, the better." The Modulightor Duplex shows the dynamism Rudolph could create when designing for himself. In a 2018 tribute to Rudolph's career, Rudolph's partner, Ernst Wagner, who purchased the property with Rudolph in 1989 and lived in the duplex until his death in 2024, called the Modulightor, quote, "a dynamic composition, a work of architectural artistic intensity, and a practical building." For the interior, Wagner continued, Rudolph became his own contractor, meeting with the craftspeople each morning and carefully, like a sculptor, arranging mock-ups with foam core boards, shifting, adjusting, balancing the forms and voids until he was satisfied. Sometimes he'd come back the next day and say, "Oh, I made a mistake, take it down." So they'd rework the elements, the kind of thing you can do when you're your own client. Wagner related that Rudolph thought in terms of spatial movement, creating intricate multi-tiered spirals of space. As you transition from one level to another, the width and the height of the space keeps changing, adjusting, and expanding through a series of movements of vertical and horizontal planes, creating a kinetic assemblage and multiple viewpoints. Yet the space feels dynamic and serene at the same time. Further, Wagner noted that Rudolph was interested in modular systems, a kit of parts that could create multiple and more economical solutions, which he pursued in the furniture he created for the Modulightor's duplex. Finally, the Modulightor duplex reflects Rudolph's ideas about light. Wagner noted that Rudolph understood the effect of light and lighting as a fourth dimension. He cared about the way light worked in his buildings, thoroughly analyzing the effect as part of his design process, and even inventing his own fixtures. The Modulightor Duplex is the only place in New York City where the public can experience Rudolph's ideas about space, modular systems, and light. We are lucky Rudolph was able to articulate his ideas to such sublime effect here, and that Ernst Wagner and the Paul Rudolph Institute of Modern Architecture have stewarded this space with such exceptional care. We look forward to this designation and note that Modulightor is one of many outstanding modernist structures and interiors in New York City worthy of designation, such as the Breuer Building, which LPC recently recognized. We thank LPC for its recent work on modernism and urge the Commission to continue its evaluation and designation of modern architecture. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next will be Liz Waitkus. I'll be promoting you to panelist, after which we ask you to state your name for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning, Commissioners. Liz Waitkus for Docomomo US. Docomomo US is pleased to support the designation of the Paul Rudolph designed Modulightor Building at 246 East 58th Street as a New York City interior landmark. By our count, this would be New York City's 7th interior designation of a modern interior that includes the Guggenheim, the TWA Flight Center, the Seagram's Building, the Ford Foundation, Manufacturers Hanover Trust, and the UN Plaza Hotel and Ambassador Grill. These, along with the calendared interior for the former Whitney Museum of American Art, is an impressive range of interiors of the mid-20th century, and we applaud the inclusion of the interiors at the Modulightor Building to this list. Paul Rudolph is widely known as one of the 20th century masters of defining space with his technique of layering multiple planes with one defined floor level. This technique can be seen in many of his most significant designs, including the interior of the Art and Architecture Building at Yale, the Halston residence here in New York, and his own home at 23 Beekman Place. At Modulightor, Rudolph delicately layers pathways between floors, providing sightlines not typically expressed in common row house design. Each room is lightly separated, which often makes the entire space feel fuller or at times provocative in terms of what may be behind any particular separation. Walking from the main stairs to the enclosed kitchen into the double height living spaces offers guests an intimate and dramatic journey through the space. Docomomo US is enthusiastic for this designation, not only for its exceptional design, but also because Rudolph's hand and belongings in the space can be found nearly at every turn. It should be mentioned that promoting Rudolph's legacy and the integrity of a Modulightor are the long-standing work of Rudolph's recently deceased partner, Ernst Wagner. We cannot underestimate how meaningful it is for Modulightor, which houses the Paul Rudolph Institute for Modern Architecture, to continue to open its doors to the public for tours and hosting architectural exhibitions. From students to past employees, educators, architects, to those who are just curious about design and a cool evening in New York, Modulightor is one of the few house museums where dialogue flows freely, and we strongly support the interior designation of this New York City landmark. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. If any other members of the public joining us via Zoom would like to speak, please use the raise hand function. All right, seeing none, I will note for the record that we received written testimony in support of designation from the Iconic Houses Foundation and the NYC LGBT Historic Sites Project, as well as 8 individuals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for their very supportive comments today. And commissioners, if there are no other questions, we'll make a motion to close the hearing, and then we'll bring this back for a vote in the very near future. All right, so Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion to close?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the hearing is closed, and we will notify the public when we're ready to come back for a vote, which should be in the near future. Thank you all. Thanks so much. All right, we'll now move to our Preservation Department agendas, and we'll turn it over to Caroline Kane-Levy, Deputy Director in the Preservation Department, to take us through the agenda.
Good morning, Commissioners. The first item is item number 1, docket number LPC 25-05428, an application for a certificate of appropriateness at 260 Clinton Avenue in the Clinton Hill Historic District, Borough of Brooklyn, Block 1915, Lot 50. A French Second Empire-style warehouse designed by Frederick T. and Catherine Griffings and built between 1874 and 78. And the application is to install a parlor floor entrance, stoop, and railings.
Can you hear me? Better.
Okay.
Got it. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Alexander Stoltz from SADA Architecture. I'm representing the owner on our proposed project. Where do I do this? Got it. Got it. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. In our introductory slide, our proposal is to reestablish the original building entrance location with a new stoop, a new door, and a door surround that is a modification of the historic design. At left on this slide is a photo of the existing building, its current condition. At right is an image of our proposed alteration, altering the stoop and the door. Just as a reiteration of the historic district, an aerial photo of the left showing Fort Greene Park, Fort Greene Historic District to the left. And then our district is the Clinton Hill District, and locating our building in the upper left of that area. An overall view of the west side of Clinton Avenue, showing the variety of building types on this block and illustrating that these are 4 French Second Empire row houses standing alone without additional similar context. The building, our building is circled in red. The building directly to the left has been altered. It's a rental building. The 2 buildings on the right have also been altered, and we'll talk about that. They are owned by St. Joseph's College, so they're institutionally owned. These are all the tax lot photos of the subject building and its neighbors, showing the original state of the buildings with curved entrance doors and pediments, full height first floor windows, and wide stoops with substantial balusters and newel posts. I would like to note that on all of these, that the pediment originally crossed the line of the lot lines between the neighbors. Also illustrates the original steps up from the sidewalk, which has been changed as evidence on the next 2 slides. But I just want to point out to you that it's very important to our presentation that the areas here were raised originally, and you'll see that they are all lowered now to grade. So that's very important to what we are presenting. Zooming in on these 4 buildings and their current state, the stoops have all been removed and the facades have markedly changed. The changes to the middle 2 buildings are centered on the first floor and below, while the building at the left have been substantially altered. And the one at the far right has also been altered with a Art Deco entrance. Zooming in farther to focus on the changes in our specific building. The removed stoop and the railings, as I mentioned, the removed entry door and the pediments surround. The first floor windows had been raised previously. The grade had been lowered so that there's much less of a grade now. What remains now is a building that is very simplified and more rectilinear than what existed previously. A 2D elevational building of the existing conditions, and a 2D elevation building showing our proposed. The proposed design, we believe our proposed altered version is a more appropriate recreation than an exact replica of the original stoop and door location. Number 1, the grade has been lowered, which would mean that the stoop would have to be significantly taller than the original stoop, which we believe would cause it to be out of scale if we were to replicate the original. An exact recreation of the stoop would be impossible of the pediment because the original one crossed the lot line, and we can't do that today. Any recreation would have to be cut off or altered in a way to negatively affect its appearance. Most of the curvilinear aspects of the original facade are now gone. We believe a more rectilinear approach fits better with the current row as they are today. And likewise, as much of the original detail has been removed from these and the surrounding buildings, we believe a simplified yet still ornate building railing would be more appropriate at this stage than the altered version of the original design. A colored version of the proposed design and an enlarged elevation drawing, along with proposed materials, painted wood door and tinted stucco. A plan view of the stoop with information regarding its detailing and dimensions. An elevation view of the stoop showing our proposed newel post and balustrade. Note that while these elements are not traditionally French Second Empire in nature, we believe they are appropriate to the building, and then combinations of styles and transitional styles are present in several precedents in the neighborhood, as we're going to explain. Technical drawings of the newel post, railing, balusters, and understoop gate. Technical drawings of the proposed door, surround, and pediment. Precedent, we have 4 precedents. The first precedent is within our historic district. It's quite far from it. As you can see, it's on the lower right as opposed to our building on the upper left. This focuses on the door surround and the pediment. The rectilinear nature of the door surround is what we are pointing out here. The railing is also similar to what we are proposing within the same historic district. Precedent number 2 is also rather far away, but within the same historic district down here, as opposed to ours. This precedent example, we are focusing on the railing and newel post, where you can see that the detailing and the newel post are very similar to what we are proposing. Precedent number 3 is not in our historic district, but it is closer. So it's in the Fort Greene, next to Fort Greene Park. It's much closer. It's right there on Washington Park. And we are focusing on the railing and the newel post. This is a blow up of it. And our last precedent is also next to Fort Greene Park, and we are focusing on the railing and newel post. Just a conclusion slide showing the existing condition with our proposed.
Thank you. And we have some questions. Commissioner Ginsburg.
Yeah, the bottom of the stair, doesn't the handrail have to extend past the stair by code? This is just, I'm concerned that when you go to the building department, they're going to make you extend the rail, which is then going to cause problems with issues with how this looks.
So this is a convenience stair. This is not our egress stair. We're able to egress through underneath the stoop.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Chu.
Just to understand, the windows are wider than the ones above them at the piano nobile when you get up the stairs. Is that correct?
They are. That's original, I
Yeah,
believe, the
right.
width, yes.
Okay, and so the difference in the stairs, obviously the run, because the bottom, the grade level has lowered. Is the width that different than the original?
The original was quite wide.
Yeah, you mentioned that. How did that engage the left side of the stair?
I can go back to that slide if you prefer. Sorry.
It looks pretty similar.
Right.
You don't have much space between the doors with that.
But I can tell you that this newel post, as it curved
Mhm.
at the bottom, did go over the property line.
It
I'm
did.
fairly certain. It's hard to
Okay.
tell, but I'm fairly certain of that. It's very much more grand than what we are proposing. I do know that, but I think it would even be more grand given the additional 3 risers that we would need.
Okay, and I'm sorry if I missed this, I just wanted to catch your explanation because the biggest alteration is the flat the flat arch at the entry as
Yes.
opposed to the historic arch
Round.
one. And what was your reasoning behind that?
Our reasoning, wouldn't call it, I would just call it a a design reasoning, let's call it that, because I believe if we were to do a large rounded opening, a rounded pediment, that it would stand out even more on this row, and the row has been rectified. I mean, there is no more rounded anywhere. And I'm concerned, honestly, that I don't think, being that the right two buildings are in institutional hands, the left building is not going to change anytime soon, that this is not going to, we're not trying to set a precedent for these buildings on the right and left to do. I mean, ideally, yes, but most likely it's not going to be a precedent. I don't want this to stand out too much. I don't want this to be to look out of place.
So your proposed design is being contextual with the current condition.
That's exactly that's exactly what I'm arguing.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Lutfi.
I know we can see a little bit of what's, down on the left. And what is there? Just speaking of the context.
Oh, it's completely eclectic. Which slide is it? So you've got,
How far down? Yeah.
you've got a wood frame building right here. Our building is right there. You've got a wood frame. You've got a Queen Anne. You've got, I don't believe there are any more brownstones. They're all different on this side. This side is Dillon Children's Center. And then there's a incredibly beautiful big one family on the side, and then St. Joseph's Library. So it's very different. And the other side are all the old Pratt buildings the big mansions.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
Just a piece of information. If the 1915 photo, I don't know when the building was built, but I have a photo of 1915. The examples that you gave, were they built around the same time or were they later? Because
precedents.
Everything seems lighter on the examples you gave.
The precedents that we're looking at are all tax law photos. So is that what you're asking, the precedent?
Yeah, the precedents that you gave, what dates? Do they have the same historical date, just for information?
It's a very good question. I don't know if I have that information, but obviously
1951, we don't know actually when they were built.
I would say they were all built in the same era.
Okay.
I can't tell you exactly.
Right. They would be late 19th century, so within that sort of
So
period of,
the lighter handrails
yeah.
or something that came later.
Well, that's the intervention that the alteration that we are proposing is the lighter handrails as the main issue.
But these
With
handrails are original to this types.
To those buildings, it's original, yeah. All right, let's see if we have any public testimony and then we'll come back to you. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak on this item? Noting that there isn't, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen Thompson to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. Anyone joining us remotely via Zoom, please use the raise hand function. Rosaria Sinisi, I'll be promoting you to panelists, after which we ask you to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Yes.
hear you.
My name is Rosaria Sinisi, and I represent Citizens for Responsible Neighborhood Planning of Clinton Hill and Fort Greene, which is involved in historic preservation matters in both districts. We are always happy to see the restoration of original stoops, and this revised proposal improves on the ones submitted originally to Community Board 2's Land Use Committee. However, we feel there is room for further improvement in 2 areas. The proposal shows a much narrower stoop than that shown in the original tax photo. While we understand the lot line issues, the new stoop handrails proposed terminate into pilasters on each side of the door at its top, but the photos offered as comparables, which are also, for the most part, French Second Empire, show those handrails terminating outside the pilaster elements that support their respective stoop pediments. If the new stoop must lose the dramatic width and flare of the original, adding a few inches to the stoop width and moving these handrails outwards so that they terminate outside the proposed pilasters, as shown in the comparables offered, would give a visual impression of a wider stoop without crossing the property line necessarily, particularly with an altered arch pediment at the top and possibly at the bottom of the stoop, where in most properties similar to these, it's only the bottom stair, the bottom brownstone stair, that actually turns slightly across the property line for a couple of inches. And you see that as a standard all the way up and down brownstone blocks. So we think that that should also be explored, and that modification could make the stoop look wider and more in proportion to the scale of the building. Likewise, restoring the original graceful arched French Second Empire pediment over the door at the top of the stoop, echoing the curves in the building's mansard windows, could also honor the original design without necessarily crossing the property line. And the pilasters flanking the door might be deeper to support the increased depth of the arch pediment, adding more heft to the scale of the stoop. Excuse me. It is worth noting that the buildings of the same scale and approximate construction date offered as comparables all feature arched pediments crowning their stoop doors. It is also worth noting that applicant's stoop restoration could set a precedent for future stoop restorations in its row. The row containing this property faces the original Pratt mansions across the street, now owned by Pratt Institute and St. Joseph's College, and is located on the most celebrated block of the Clinton Hill Historic District. So the further refinement of this proposal would provide a positive benefit to the entire streetscape. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else joining us via Zoom, please use the raise hand function. All right, noting none, I'll note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 2 recommends conditional approval, noting concern that reproducing the original stoop may overwhelm adjacent buildings and requesting that the balusters and handrail be redesigned in accordance with the grandness of the stoop scale.
Thank you. All right, would you like to respond to the testimony we've heard?
We did alter the railing design. It was a little simpler, and the community board made good points for us, which is one of the reasons that we went to a more of a Italian 8-panel design. I'm not. I don't believe that we could go farther. That one was popular. We could hold it off on the side of the facade easily. That's no problem.
I think what she was suggesting is that the railing be pushed to the other side of the pilaster without widening the steps, so that it's just to sort of the outside edge of the steps. It would change how the railing meets the newel post. Okay. All right. Any other final questions? We'll move to our discussion then. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing's closed and we'll begin our discussion. This is a row of 4 buildings in a very eclectic block with a lot of diverse building types. each of the four buildings has been altered significantly with the removal of their stoops and the removal of some level of ornament. This proposal is to restore a stoop, and they've also, the grade has been lowered at the front areaways. Proposal is for a new stoop that would address the height change, the change in grade, and a new door with a new door surround. And it looks toward more transitional details to fit within the current context. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Chu, would you like to start this one?
Sure. I think that in terms of what's being proposed, and considering the state of the street and the extent of alterations done to many of the neighboring houses and buildings here, to me, I feel, well, the two issues that were of somewhat concern or questions for me were the top pediment of the entry door. And I feel that I find this is appropriate. It is returning a stoop back. It was taken away. It is bringing back the general sense of where entry is raised above the street level. I can see revisions are being done to the stoop itself and the stair. My comment about the stair balustrade and rail are that I do think that they should work a little with staff here to see if some revision. My initial concern was that because the house is, the entry is quite narrow and it has been extended as well, there are probably a few more risers on the stair. Just a little concerned that it won't have the grandeur and welcoming expression that the original house did. And I think that some minor alterations, maybe this, the way that it meets at the top can be altered as it meets down at the bottom. There are nuances, I think, that can just help make it a little bit more gracious. Otherwise, I think I can approve what's being proposed.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Master?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Chu. I think the restoration of the stoop is wonderful. I think that the design around the door surround is also appropriate. I'm fine with the railings as they are, but I agree that with Commissioner Chu that perhaps they can fine tune it with staff.
Okay. Commissioner Jefferson?
I agree with the comments of my fellow commissioners.
Okay. Commissioner Ginsburg?
Ditto, I agree with the comments of fellow commissioners.
Commissioner Chen?
One might object.
Okay, and Vice Chair Bland?
Yeah, this is a grand house on a grand block on a grand street. You know, when Mr. Pratt, Rockefeller's partner, decided to move to Brooklyn, this instantly establishes residencies on this block. It instantly made this the block of Brooklyn, which in many ways it still is, I think, architecturally. So I think this is a wonderful alteration to a once grand house. Still pretty grand, actually. And I think the comments that have been made already reflect my own thoughts as well. It's appropriate, but maybe a little tweaking here with staff can make it slightly better.
Thank you. Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I think this is in general very approvable. They're replacing several elements which will harmonize with the streetscape and relate well to the period profiles and details, and including the stoop, door surround and railings. I think that working with the staff on the details of the railings and pilaster is probably a good idea, given the comments that we've had about the width of the stoop and how the appearance, a little bit of tinkering there, I think would be productive. And on the arch pediment, I also thought it would be nice, but we don't require there be an exact replication. And in fact, the architect indicated they were not trying for that. They're trying to have something that would be appropriate. And I think that this definitely, is within our, grounds of what would be appropriate. So I can certainly approve it. And as I said, perhaps work with the staff on the one detail.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Lutfi.
I agree with my fellow commissioners, both on the rationale, the choices that were made, and I do agree also that the applicant should work with staff on the details. I do want to say that the original entryway was beautiful. And it's a little heart-wrenching to see those things disappear, like forever. So this is now the new, this is it. So that's it.
Okay, so I think we have a consensus to support this application with the modification that they continue to work with the staff to refine the details of the railings and their placement. Okay, Commissioner Chu, would you make that motion?
Yes. In the case of LPC 2505-428, 260 Clinton Avenue, the Clinton Hill Historic District, a French Second Empire style row house designed by Frederick T. and Catherine Griffins and built between 1874 and 1878. The application is to install a parlor, floor entrance, stoop, and railings. I note that the building's scale, style, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Clinton Hill Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will return prominent missing historic elements of the facade without eliminating or damaging any original architectural features or significant later alterations. We note that the proposed design and details of the stoop, entry, and railings, which vary from the historic, will not detract from any extant unifying features of the row. And as Chair Carol has mentioned, the applicant is to work with staff on the details and fine-tuning of the details of the stoop and hand railing balustrade as it meets the entry pilasters and at the bottom at the newel posts to make the stair feel a bit grander and more gracious. That the height of the stoop will correspond to the existing grade of the areaway, which was lowered in the mid-20th century. That the stucco for the stoop and surround will closely replicate the historic brownstone in texture and finish. That the scale and level of ornamentation at the surround and railings will harmonize with the modestly designed 20th century alterations to the building and row. That the entablature and pilasters will be consistent with entrance surround elements at other row houses of this style and age within the historic district and will feature profiles and details which relate well to the historic profiles and details of the building's facade. And the entrance infill will be consistent with the historic infill in terms of configuration, details, material, and finish. That the railings will be consistent with the variety of railings historically found at roadhouses of this age. And that the work will enhance special architectural or historic character of the building, the streetscape, and the historic district.
Thank you. And Commissioner Master, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion passed.
All right, that's approved, and please continue to work with the staff on those details. And we'll move to the next item.
Okay, I'm going to note a schedule change. We're going to read into the record the next item, item number 2, LPC 25-07011. That was 348 MacDonough Street in the Stuyvesant Heights Historic District, not to be presented today. We'll read it into the record to be presented at a future hearing date. And that will take us to public hearing item number 3, LPC 25-04579, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 1074, lot 40, 186 8th Avenue in the Park Slope Historic District. This is a French Renaissance style row house built in 1897 to 98. The application is to construct a rear yard addition.
Wait, you can say that.
Okay. Hi, Brendan Coburn, architect for this application, 186 8th Avenue. This is in the Park Slope Historic District. The star marks the location. It's on 8th Avenue. in the sort of northern part of the district. This is the front of the house is on the left. It's part of a row of three. The rear of the house is the photograph on the right. This is the gist of the application, just to sort of quickly look at it. The drawing on the left is the existing condition. The drawing on the right is the proposed alteration. You can see that this row of three houses, the one on the corner, so the corner of the block is right there on the right side. That building has had multiple additions over the years. Started out taller in its extension, and then got converted to an apartment building at some point. So it sort of got fully filled out. The house directly to the right of our project, we believe, got a first floor rear yard extension in 2020-ish. And then our proposal is to add a two-story rear yard extension in the same space. So this is a little axonometric describing the existing condition. The red building to the left is one of a row of, I think, four of pretty much identical configuration, large rear yard extensions, sort of larger than what's existing in our three buildings. And then I think you can really see the sort of funny accretions that have occurred to our row, the corner building being the sort of most involved. You can see that the corner building was initially 3 stories tall with a 2-story portion, and then the third story was eventually filled in, we think, around the time in the 1930s, late 30s. There's high visibility here from First Street. Again, you can see our building is the white one, 3 over. You can tell which one it is because it's next to the red brick extension. So you can see that there is visibility of the second floor extension. There it is. And there's the rendering of the proposed extension. And we are showing it, we've designed it to be set back 4 inches or 8 inches? 8 inches from the masonry facade, so that it's, clearly subservient, and it's a wood and glass extension with an iron rail. It's really rather simple and sort of meant to allow the original form of the building to continue to read. This is just the front tax photos for reference. There's no work here. And then quickly the plans, the existing on the left, the proposed infill on the right. You can see the buildings to the right of our property have those longer rear yard extensions as well. This is a building section showing the landmarks person across the street, so not an issue there, but plenty of visibility, as I said, from First Street. And the right line is outlining the profile of our building, so you can see that it is set back. The primary elements of the facade are set back the 8 inches from the masonry, and then that gives us space for the sort of roof frieze and fascia to be worked out and come in line with the masonry. Just a building section showing the assembly. This is our position in the block. You can see there's oodles of extensions in this part of Park Slope, most of them original, most of them also then modified or added onto or altered in some way. Just a little more context. Yeah, so before and after, 2-story. Existing plans, proposed plans. And then so this is our color study of the extension. So the buildings are all painted white brick. They appear to have always been painted white brick. And we are not changing any of that. We are just filling in our two-story extension with our wood and glass structure, and then an steel spiral stair down to the backyard. The house already has its lintels and sills painted black, so we're continuing that detail in this facade. Existing proposed. Just some existing condition photos of what's going on. There's a deck there currently. Plans. This is just another contextual photo from across First Street, on the far side of First Street, looking over at the visibility of our building. And then these are some other recent extensions in the relatively recent extensions in the neighborhood that are visible from side yards. Existing, proposed. I think that's it, right? One more. Oh, that's the final image. So that's it.
All right, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Chu.
So the addition of you said it's wooden glass?
Well, the door system is wood, and then the frieze and fascia and the panels are wood, and then the steel handrail and deck down to the not deck, but just a little spiral stair down to the garden.
Okay. And it's hard to tell from the drawings, but the detail of the roof eave has some kind of profile to it.
Yeah. So it
Like
has
section. What's that?
Yeah. It'll be the last one.
Okay.
Do we have it? Number 12. Okay. Yeah, so there is a frieze and then a fascia and a popping out. We're actually doing a Yankee gutter for the roof, so that nothing drips on the facade or all the water comes back. And then I should say that the roof is a metal roof.
But that element does not extend beyond the face of the masonry. It's hard to tell. It looks like it could
Slightly.
but it could easily come back.
It could.
Okay. Would you call that detail, the look and profile, more contemporary, or?
No, I think we were trying to break up a large forehead. It was,
Okay.
in order to get the sort of structure in there and then accommodate a skylight in the space. And then we have a HVAC system tucked into that roof assembly. We had a sort of a bigger chunk of roof. And so visually, I wanted to just break it down by adding some shadow lines to it.
Okay.
So I'm not feeling it's not feeling too modern to me.
No, I'm not saying that's a negative thing at all. I'm just trying to get a sense of the aesthetic of because I consider it an infill piece. It looks like an infill between two projected elements, and I'm trying to get a sense of its character.
Okay.
The fact that it's wood and glass tell me it's more contemporary compared to the masonry, which for me is a positive thing. There's a distinction between them.
Okay. Should I go back to that last picture just to?
Okay. Other questions?
Yeah.
All right. I think not any other questions at this time. So we'll see if we have public testimony. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak on this item? Noting that there isn't, I'll turn it over to Stephen Thompson to see if we have any remote participants.
If anyone joining us via Zoom would like to offer testimony, please use the raise hand function. Christina Britton Conroy, I will be elevating you to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Founded in New York City in 1966, the Victorian Society in America is dedicated to fostering the appreciation and preservation of our 19th and early 20th century heritage. The New York chapter promotes preservation of our historic districts, individual and scenic landmarks, interiors, and civic art. Now, the VSNY does not support this proposal for a rear yard addition as it now stands. The rear facades of this building and its neighbors in the row are predominantly brick with punched window openings. The rear facade of the proposed addition is predominantly glass. And the applicant's photomontages show that the addition's upper level at the parlor floor would be clearly visible from First Street. We do support the removal of the existing windows and sections of the rear facade. The masonry is minimally detailed, and most of this work is hidden from view by the rear wings of the neighboring buildings. We support dropping the sill at one parlor floor opening to gain access to a new balcony and spiral stair leading to the garden. It will destroy a very small amount of historic material and is almost identical to another stair in the row. And the ahistoric sliders on the basement level will be hidden by the neighbor's garden walls. But the new infill at the parlor floor is overwhelmingly glassy. It will draw undue attention to itself. It bears no relationship to these historic masonry facades. The cladding on the visible upper floors should be predominantly masonry with a punched window opening. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you for your testimony. If any other members of the public joining us via Zoom would like to speak, please use the raise hand function. All right, seeing none, I will note that Brooklyn Community Board 6 recommends approval. Thank you.
All right, would you like to respond to the testimony?
Well, yeah, I guess I would say that I don't agree with that for the reason that I think we have a cadence of those extensions on that block that is interesting. That introducing masonry, I think the introduction of masonry on the corner building whenever that occurred is awkward and looks it. And I think that the extension that's been done on the adjacent house to us, I think is appropriate and feels appropriate. And I think that ours is similarly appropriate, modest, and sort of disappearing.
And in some ways, the design and fenestration is a little evocative of T porches that you might see if you look into a rear yard.
Yeah, or even a, what do you call it, a glass conservatory. Yeah.
Right, even though it's not the full width and nestled in. Okay. Any final questions, Commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Lutfi.
Just wondering where that gate is where you have the oblique view of the back, you know, on First Street. What is that? Is that like a gate to a parking lot or something?
I don't think so.
I think it was the yard.
You think
Yeah,
just
I think
that
it's just the
yard
corner
has a
yard.
gate? Okay, that's all, I just want to understand that. 'Cause
Oh,
it's
that
not-
was it,
The
right.
photo doesn't show it that well.
There.
Yeah, but that's, who knows what that is?
Oh, that's their yard.
Here's the next row house.
Okay.
It's just a fence.
Yeah, it's just
a fence.
fencing. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
One question for the architect. You're using metal and so glass and metal.
It's wood and glass. It's wood.
It's what?
The glazing system itself is a wood system.
Wait, okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
The deck and the stair are metal, though. All right, any other questions? Okay, let's close our hearing. Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Vice Chair Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The hearing is closed, and this is for an application for a two-story addition that is nestled in between two Ls and expressed in a wood and glass material to allow a continual reading of those Ls. And it doesn't project out any more deeply than the existing Ls. And this context has been shown has much deeper additions. And it does have visibility from the side street, looking through the gardens, where you see the second floor. Commissioner Jefferson, would you like to start this one?
Two-story building. And the addition of the material wood and the color of the wood is appropriate. It's really a very thoughtful, careful design.
Thank you.
It's appropriate.
Commissioner Ginsburg?
I agree. I also think that it is good it is not masonry because it keeps with the design and shows what's more original. And I think it's appropriate.
Commissioner Chen?
And just to follow up on that, the key word is what you just used, nestle. And then I think in this case, we had an option. If you would find masonry, you would make it look much more massive. And I think this is clearly a delineation of a new addition.
Vice Chair Bland?
Highly appropriate in glass as opposed to masonry, and very well done altogether. Very appropriate, I think.
Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I find that the size is appropriate in the context, and I think the materials and it's giving sort of a greenhouse or conservatory feel, which I think is completely appropriate in this instance. And I think my only concern is that no element project beyond the masonry has been expressed before. And I'm glad they're having it recessed, but they should also not have the top project beyond the masonry.
Commissioner Lutfi?
I agree with my fellow commissioners. I want to say that the applicant is very fortunate to be working in a situation where they have they have these L's that, no matter, if you're working in a smart way, the addition really kind of fits in. It's almost like a Lego piece, like snapping into the rear facade. And the fact, I agree that it's glass in a situation where, there's nothing you can do about the oblique visibility. It lessens it, and it does, and it seems more recessed than it would if it were masonry. I do agree with what's been expressed about just getting that little roof setback, and that can be done with staff, but otherwise I think it's a very good project.
Commissioner Chu?
Yeah, I agree with my fellow commissioners. I support an addition here that does not try to emulate the historic existing masonry context. So having a new addition have dialogue with the existing is definitely appropriate and desirable. I want to make sure that no element, including the roof or the gutter, extend beyond the masonry base. In fact, I'd like to ask that it stay one brick module behind the edge of the masonry, so that it does really express itself as a new contemporary infill as opposed to assuming up the building face at the back.
Okay. Commissioner Master?
I agree with the comments. I think it's appropriate.
Okay. So we'll make a motion to approve it, and we'll ask them to work with the staff on the detail of the cornice and gutter to make it not project beyond the masonry. Yeah. Thank you.
In the matter of LPC -25-04-579, application is to construct of a guard addition. I note that the building style, scale, material, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historical character of the Park Slope Historic District. That the proposed work, I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not eliminate any significant historical features. That only portion of the rear yard addition will be visible from the oblique views along First Street. Therefore, it will have a minimal visual impact on the streetscape. That the building already has a historic 3-story L. Therefore, the construction of a 2-story addition next to the L, which will not project further than the existing L, will not overwhelm the building, although or diminish the block central green space. That the design and materiality of the rear yard addition will feature a black painted wood assemblies roof with a skylight and a metal deck with stairs will be in keeping with the residential character of the building and the other buildings in the block. And that the work will not diminish the special architectural and historical character of the building or the Park Slope Historic District. I don't have to.
Right. And that you'll work with the staff on the details of that fascia and gutter to ensure that it doesn't project beyond. Commissioner Master, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, and Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, that's approved. Thank you. We'll move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 4. '92 Prospect Place, Park Slope Historic District Extension 2. It's LPC 25-04172. It's an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 939, lot 7503. This is an Italianate style row house, and the application is to construct a rear yard addition.
Hello. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Gilles Depardon. I'm from Regard Depardon Architect. I represent Elizabeth Pagano, who is our client and who owns the 2 bottom levels of 92 Prospect Place. Which one button am I pushing? Sorry. Up and down. I see. Okay. The site is located on Prospect Place between 6th Avenue and Flatbush. And we're proposing a 2-story addition in the backyard, essentially 15 feet by 20. The lot is 20 feet wide and about 24 feet tall. Oops, sorry, wrong way. This is the existing lot. It's above, existing building. You can see from this photograph, there's an addition next to us, which is a full height addition. And I believe the landmarks designation actually stops right on our property, on the west side of our property, which is right here in this photograph. And so a lot of the buildings to the west of us are actually not landmarked and are very modern looking. East of us, there's quite a few additions as well, which I'll show you in a second. So this is the donut, as we call it. These are all the additions that we were able to verify in terms of the lengths. Our 20-foot addition, sorry, a 15-foot addition is slightly longer, the one right next to us, but actually matches and actually shorter than some of the others on the lot, on the block. This is the front facade, which we're dealing with staff on. We are going to renovate the bottom 2 floors of this. We're changing the windows, but basically this is it being done at staff level. This is the rear yard, and as you can see from our rear yard, the bottom 2 floors, the historic fabric was heavily compromised in the 70s. Literally, there was nothing left of the bottom 2 floors. On the right is the west side building, which is a full height addition. On the left is the building next to us on the east, which has a small 1-story addition with a stair going to the garden. This is our back facade with kind of a block out of what our addition would be. Sections, existing section, a proposed section. So we're basically going to do 2 stories. The roof is actually not accessible from the 3rd floor. It is going to be a green roof, dedicated by the building department at this point. And then we have a 7-foot deck extending into the rear yard as well. This is the extent of what we are demolishing in the back, and that actually just matches from window to window. So it's really just replacing that center brick section that's in pink here. And this is our proposed addition. And we have a bit of pictures right there. So they're all Pella windows. And what you're looking actually is a cut through the deck. So you're actually not seeing the actual facades, just the bottom are just 2 big doors. to a slightly lowered garden area and then a deck above. This is the brick we're proposing for the back, which actually matches the brick on the building next door. And the window on the left is just showing the windows that we're proposing. This is just quickly going through the plans. And then this is just to show you what we're proposing to do on the top parapet of our extension, which again is just a brick facade. The side walls are going to be stucco and on a block, not edifice. And yep. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions on this one? And just, can you tell us how deep the rear yard addition is?
15 feet.
15 feet, okay. Commissioner Chu.
And what's the neighboring building on the right?
In terms of the depth?
Yeah,
It's, I think, 13 feet.
13 feet. And what is the finish of the existing facade above the two floors? Are you're redoing that?
We're not touching that.
You're not
They're
touching
all
it?
going to be remain stucco and painted.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, we'll move to public testimony, and I'll note that there is no one in the hearing room to speak on this item, so I will turn it over to Stephen Thompson to see if we have any remote participants.
If anyone joining us via Zoom would like to offer testimony, please use the raise hand function. All right, seeing none, I will note that Brooklyn CB6 recommends approval on the condition that the back railing be changed from horizontal to vertical.
On the condition, sorry, that what?
The back railing be changed from horizontal to vertical.
The railing, okay. Okay, would you like to address that
Sure. I mean,
comment?
we're actually okay with that if that's what commissioners want. We have no problem changing those rails.
Okay. Any final questions, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Jefferson?
It's one of those difficult questions. How do you decide to extend your building 15 feet by 20 rather than anything else?
The New York City
decision made.
Sorry, May.
Go ahead.
So New York City basically requires a 30-foot rear yard. We're at 30 foot and a half. That's why it was 15 feet. It's just trying to maximize the amount of space that we can use. Ms. Regano actually has all the air rights. We're allowed to build quite a bit. The FAR is not matched. We're building 600 square feet. So she's not utilizing all of the FAR.
Okay.
You're using zoning as a criteria.
Yeah.
I'm talking about in terms of your neighbors. How do you decide?
Do you want to go to the block plan that shows the
Sure.
context and? Yes. You have a very clear block plan that's color coded and dimensioned.
There you go.
Yeah.
So there are quite a few additions that are deeper than ours. You can sort of see on this plan, and there's some that we actually haven't measured, which couldn't verify the actual dimensions, but there's a lot of buildings on this lot that are actually much deeper than our proposed addition.
Is the building next to yours an addition in brick? If you're showing us the picture?
The brick is actually the facade on the front of the building, 2 doors down from us.
No, but on the rear.
On the rear facade, no, they're all, let me go back to the pictures if you want.
That looked like a newer facade on the rear. That
Yes,
on the right
that's correct.
is.
It looks
It's the
like
same
a-
brick that
But
we're proposing.
Is it an addition or is it?
This is a full new addition, full height addition.
Okay, but you didn't show it on your lot plan.
Yes, it is. It's there.
It's not shown as an addition.
I don't see it as an addition. on your
Oh,
lot.
I'm sorry. It's a full, so let me show you on this facade right here. On the left photograph, you can see the building. It was
Yeah.
completely redone top to bottom.
A
So
rebuild.
it's a rebuilt altogether.
It's a rebuild and maybe deeper than it was.
And it was deeper
originally.
than it was, correct.
Right.
Yes, Commissioner Lutfi.
Question. So the truth of the matter is, could we go back to the plan? Showing the rear and the extensions. Okay, in fact, the truth of the matter is there aren't a lot of extensions. I mean, Donut's pretty, I think it's, there hasn't been a lot of building, and I was just wondering if you could tell me, LPC, what we have approved here.
Michelle, do you know if we've approved any of the additions shown here?
I will note that the boundaries of the historic districts are interesting here. In fact, the neighbor to the, I think directly to the right is outside of the historic district where it was being described as a rebuilt rear facade further out. Yes, yes, it's right at the edge.
It's outside.
No, the red is the proposed.
Oh, the red's the.
Yeah.
So the ones.
One right next to it.
Oh, yeah, it's outside.
Everything to the right.
Okay, got it.
And then the other side of the block is actually in the, I guess, in the regular Park Slope Historic District. Correct. So this is in the extension to the south side of this block is in the original Park Slope Historic District, but both are in Park Slope Historic District. So I think all to be considered, although to the right, again, directly adjacent to this property is outside of any historic district.
Okay.
Right. So the Park Place row is within our jurisdiction in the Park Slope Historic District, and there are two additions. That district has been designated for since many decades now. So it's possible that those two additions were approved by the commission, and we can double check that. And then on the Prospect Place side, everything to the left of the proposed is within the Park Slope extension, and which is a more recent designation. So I'm not sure if those additions were approved by LPC.
Yeah, we are aware that the one on 6th Avenue that you see there in light blue was reviewed by the commission, but that one had factors such as it was visible from a public thoroughfare and there were no other rear extensions on that row along 6th Avenue. So kind of a different context than this.
And so then the one immediately left, what's the depth of that?
It's 10 feet.
That's 10 feet.
It's 1 story, 10 feet.
And then the one to the left of that,
Is 12 feet.
12 feet.
At this length, yeah.
Yes.
That's
The
from the
decency.
DOB records.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, let's close the hearing and begin our discussion then. Commissioner Chen, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so this is an application for a two-story rear yard addition. And as we've talked about, it's within this block that has overlays two historic districts, and some portion of it is undesignated. And the additions immediately to the left of this addition are project 10 and 12 feet from the rear facade, and this projects 15. So we'll begin our it's not visible from a public way. So begin our discussion. Commissioner Chapin, would you like to start this one?
Yeah. It's this is a block with not a lot of additions, as has been noted. And on the other hand, they're sort of an assortment of additions. Trying to look at this in the context, this addition, which is next to a larger building, I mean, as constituted now, it does not, it doesn't seem unreasonable to me. I feel like it's a two-story addition. We would normally look at this as a fairly modest little addition. It's just that the other ones happen to be quite small at this point. And I see down the road with some of the larger buildings on this block that these smaller buildings, might be applying to us for a similar addition. And I wouldn't find it inappropriate. So I actually, and as far as the, design and so forth, that's okay. I think really the issue is the size here. So, I mean, I think I can find it appropriate in the context of this particular block and the other buildings in this block.
thank you. Commissioner Lutfi.
Yeah, so this is slightly tricky, I think, just given, what's landmarked and what isn't, because no matter what, it all becomes part of the greater context. And there haven't been a lot of incursions here, as we've noted. And within the landmark part of this donut, we haven't really approved anything that's very deep. And what's there, the deepest is 12 feet.
Well, there are some others that are
I
20
mean,
feet. but
within the
yeah.
district, I mean.
Yeah, and also
Yeah.
just so we're clear, that the statement's clear, it's not just be careful. It's not to say it, we haven't approved, doesn't mean we've denied,
Mhm.
right? It very well be this is the first application, right? So.
Right, no,
that's
no,
all.
I
Yeah, yeah.
understand.
Just so-
I do understand
And it
that.
doesn't necessarily mean that it's inappropriate if it hasn't been
Right.
approved before.
I understand. I just think there's nothing wrong with the design in general. It's a design, the facade itself is one that we would approve. I just feel like it would be appropriate for it to step back a little bit. I'm not sure it needs to go back to at least to 12 feet so that there is some kind of alignment with the buildings that are the additions that are closest to it.
All right, Commissioner Chu.
Yeah, I think that when I look at this condition, it does seem like an application for an addition scale and size that we have typically approved. I don't see a huge difference in its mass. When I look at the materials, my only comment is the selection of the brick was to match the neighboring newer building on the right side. I thought that they could have selected maybe a brick that was not the same as that, and maybe a lighter one that might have gone with the existing facades of the existing house itself, only because I felt like it made the mass feel even bigger because it related to what was already a large mass back there. So I'm okay with the elevation, and my comment is if they would consider maybe looking at a lighter or creamer colored brick.
Okay, Commissioner Master.
In general, I agree with Commissioner Chapin's comments. I think that the design is very typical of what we would typically approve. And in terms of the depth of the rear yard addition, I see that this donut can sustain a little extra depth, and that there are other buildings that jut out in this donut as well. So my feeling is that I can approve it as presented.
Okay, Commissioner Jefferson.
When I was looking at this section, I got confused because I got confused by this length. Should it be 20 feet or not? And then when I looked at this section, I realized that the room size is only 15 feet. The room is 15 by 15, I guess, or 15 by 20. And then they have a kind of a covered portion of it. And I think it's fine. I think if they try to reduce it 3 feet, then the room would be 12 feet up. And I think the facade is fine. I think it's appropriate.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
I think the facade is fine. I could go either way on the depth. It might be good to reduce it a few feet, but I appreciate Commissioner Jefferson's point about then the proportions of the interior. So I think I can approve it.
All right, Commissioner Chen.
And yeah, I think, it's a modest, and the depth is just, adjustment, whether the condition feel like.
Vice Chair Bland.
I can approve it as is. I see nothing to be gained really by making it 2 or 3 feet shorter to align with the neighbor that's been there a long time, I guess. I think it's fine the way it is.
Okay, all right. So I think actually we have enough of commissioners to support it and as is. So we'll make a motion to approve.
And the matter is Certificate of Appropriateness, Borough of Brooklyn, LPC 25-04172-92 Prospect Place, Park Slope Historic District Extension 2. And an Italianate style row house application is to construct a rear yard addition. I note that the building's style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Park Slope Historic District Extension 2. I recommend approval with approval, finding that the proposed work will not eliminate or damage any significant architectural features, that the proposed rear yard addition will not be visible from any public thoroughfares, that the addition will not rise to the full height of the building, thereby retaining a sense of the building's original scale and massing, that the height of the addition will be compatible with its surrounding context, which includes a full height rear addition at a row house, and a modern 4-story building, which extends further into the rear yard than the historic row houses, that the addition will be simple in design and form and will feature materials and finishes that are typical of additions found within the block and elsewhere in the historic district, that the addition will feature punched masonry openings with a ratio of solid to void and a level of articulation that are consistent with other rear yard additions found within this block and historic district, and that the excavation will be done in compliance with the Department of Buildings regulations under the supervision of a licensed professional engineer to protect adjacent buildings.
All right, Vice Chair Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, that's approved and we'll move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 5, LPC 25-04975. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 945, Lot 40, 28 7th Avenue in the Park Slope Historic District. This is an empty lot, formerly a transitional French Second Empire neo-Breck style row house built in 1873 and demolished in 2023. The application is to construct a new building.
Sarah, if I could provide some background about why there's an empty lot here before the
Yes,
presentation.
Please go ahead.
At 28 7th Avenue, there was a demolition by neglect building. We began enforcement actions about a decade ago, issuing a warning letter, a summons, a chair's order. We never had any response from the owner. About the same time, the bank that had the mortgage also started foreclosure proceedings. They also could not locate the owner. She was fairly young, so we thought she had just walked away from the building. As part of that foreclosure proceeding, because no one could locate the owner, the judge appointed a guardian to represent her. The guardian then hired a private investigator to locate her, took out ads in newspapers to locate her, could not find any heirs or the owner. The foreclosure was granted about 3 or 4 years ago. The new owner then took over the property, contacted us right away, hired a structural engineer who went in, made a site visit, prepared an existing conditions report, and filed a plan to stabilize the building with us. A staff permit was issued in 2023 to stabilize the building. The owner then presented it to DOB, and unfortunately DOB didn't think it was adequate. And there was a lot of back and forth between the owner's engineer and the DOB engineers. No approval was ever granted. And so eventually DOB ordered the building to be taken down. That owner then sold it to the applicant who is here before you today.
Thank you. All right, please go ahead.
Good morning. I'm John. Good morning, John Field, Building Studio Architects. My clients, the new owners of the property, Aran and Shai, are on by Zoom with us. This is, as you've heard, maybe that's better. This, as you've heard, is 28 7th Avenue, a vacant parcel in Park Slope Historic District on the west side of 7th Avenue near Sterling Place.
repairs.
So this is 28 7th Avenue. It's a vacant parcel. On the west side of 7th Avenue near Sterling Place. The block on the west side is uniform in scale with a strength and uniformity to the fenestration and cornices. On the east, the facades are more fragmented, with the Grace Hanson United Methodist Church anchoring the corner at St. John's Place. This site was part of a row of 5 dwellings built in 1873 that represented the introduction of the neo-Greek style in Park Slope. The existing remaining buildings at 30, 32, and 34 retain ornamental treatment of the doorways, roof cornices, and smaller details such as the corbel blocks under the windows and faceted keystones at the basement windows and original stoops. Our site at 28 tragically fell victim to demolition by neglect and now is vacant. The building on the corner at 138 Sterling Place was demolished in 1960 as a result of the airplane catastrophe, which fragmented the neighborhood. This new corner building is a standalone masonry and terracotta multiple dwelling erected in the early aughts. We are proposing a 4-story, 4-unit new building of approximately 4,360 zoning square feet of an allowable 5,400 square feet. Our intent is to maintain the strength of the fenestration patterns and detailing from our historic neighbors, resolving the at-grade accessible entrance with pediment detailing borrowed from the historic stoop pediments of our neighbors. On the roof, there is a penthouse setback with very limited visibility. The cornice serves as a parapet at the street wall. We did not seize on the opportunity for a new modern building on this parcel in order to reduce the cacophony possible from the dialogue between the aesthetics to the north and our history to the south. The proposed detailing of color matched stucco, replicated ornamentation, and cornice and scale of fenestration quiets the block front. From above, you can see the penthouse set back on our roof. We have no visibility from the north, from the Sterling corner. It's blocked by the tower of our corner building. Backing further up, looking south, there is a sliver of visibility between the bulkhead and that existing cornice, that existing tower on the corner. Looking north, again, the cornices shield visibility. Backing up further, they continue to do so. From Sterling Place looking east, there is a very limited piece of visibility over the cornice rooftops. And from St. John's Place at the rear, we also have visibility across the yards of our neighboring buildings. This is a little bit of a different condition. We have stepped the rear of our building back against the much taller corner blank brick wall of that adjacent building at 138 Sterling. Here on the left, you can see the existing slot view. That is the brick wall you're looking at in the rear of 138 Sterling. And our proposed on the right, you can see the stepping of our rear facade. The rear facade is brick. It's developed more modern. It's glass and black metal railing with balconies. Looking closer, zoomed in, you can see we've added windows on this stepping facade to take advantage of light to the south. And here we have the block front. Taking you quickly through the plans, the basement floor and the cellar are a single unit. There's a rec room in the cellar. The first floor is a single unit with access to the rear yard. The second floor is a single unit. And the third floor with the penthouse is the fourth unit. Our equipment, mechanical equipment, is located on the roof of the third floor in front of the penthouse, shielded by the parapet. Our detailing at the street includes ADA access, and that's all within the property line. We do have a wall proposed that's aligned with our neighboring walls and stoops. That's within the street line. The detailing for our entrance door is simplified, but was taken from the resolution of the existing pediments at the stoop and the window sills above. We scanned the block with 3D scans, so we've developed the detailing of the stucco in conformance with the historic profiles. Our cornice above is again detailed per the original cornices. This will be constructed of wood. In further, we have door and window details. We're proposing 2/2 clad wood windows and doors at the street facade. Here are materials: stucco to match brownstone, common brick, and black metal railings. I'll conclude and open for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners? Yes, Vice Chair Bland.
Talk to us a little bit more about the stucco. Is it ground with actual brownstone sand, or is it just stucco to kind of?
It texturally will be as close to the brownstone as we can get. It is not going to be a true brownstone. It has to be a color match stucco because they can't match well the brownstone.
I'm not an expert, but my understanding is that you can put brownstone sand, if you will.
Aggregate, yes.
Yeah, it's an aggregate, but it's so small, it's really like sand. Into the stucco mix, so it really looks and feels. I mean, I know across the street from where I live, and actually once lived at 43 Pierpont Street, it's been done like that, and it looks pretty darn good. It looks like brownstone, but it's a coating, and I'm asking this, drilling down on it, because I think it's a fine line between what could be appropriate here and what would not be appropriate.
And I respect that, and I will work with our clients, the owner developers, and staff in process to make sure we get a specification that they're confident with, particularly staff.
All right. Other questions? Commissioner Ginsburg.
You don't have any wall sections that show how you're constructing this. It's just like material pasted on this box, and I find that troubling because normally we would see wall sections. Is there a reason you didn't include them?
So those are being developed. I'm the landmarks architect, let's call it, or aesthetic architect. We have an engineer architect of record doing the construction drawings. We will be developing those together, and staff will be very involved.
Then a second question. My understanding is above the ground floor, you're trying to match the adjacent buildings details pretty much totally. But then the entrance and the entrance lighting are not matching something and seem to be a little more modern in detailing. Can you explain how?
I can, and that was something that we worked a few iterations on, let's just say. We started with a vestigial portico similar to our neighbor at 32, which just didn't look right. It looked like an inappropriate fragment. With ADA and DOT challenges, we chose not to put back a stoop on the front of the building because this is a 4-family. And we developed this more modern, simpler approach at the cellar level, at the basement level there, to reflect that this is a new building, but harkens back to what came historically. You'll notice that the corbel blocks and the arches at the basement windows are also straightened out.
Thank you.
That was related to my question.
Okay.
Is the reason for not bringing the stoop back because of a certain planning constraint or the fact that it's multifamily?
It's mostly because it's multifamily and the circulation didn't work well with like an ADA apartment on the ground floor and then trying to get upstairs and having the egress all going out.
So basically,
Nicely.
the ground floor would still be ADA accessible in the stoop condition as you have it. The parlor level, you would probably lose the vestibule for that bedroom on the left at the entry. That's really the loss, because then you get back to a stair and you go up and you do the rest of the plan you already have. So it's a loss of a bedroom essentially.
Correct.
That's the reasoning.
Okay. Commissioner Jefferson?
I must commend you. I look at page 3 and I see the west block elevation and I see your building. I imagine your building where the site is now. And it's a beautiful urban design idea that you've come up with. The block is really tells a story, you know, and the building in the middle, which is kind of different from the others, but what you did there was very nicely done. The whole block.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay. Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I wonder if any of the architects or staff have experience with the CMU with the stucco on it, and that's how it does. I'm not really familiar with that as,
I think one of the things that needs to be ensured, and I think Commissioner Bland mentioned the type of stucco. That's very important. From my experience, it definitely needs to be at least a 3-coat system, which tends to be thicker, a little bit more layers and drying time. It takes longer than a very superficial stucco system on block, but it makes a difference in the
and can
appearance.
that also achieve a better grade of detail in the?
Well, you have, it potentially could do that, but I also think it just has, it has to do with the resilience of the stucco
Durability, yeah.
system.
It also has a scoring in it that mimics blocks of.
And the material makeup makes a difference, as you mentioned. If you have the brownstone material in the cementitious mix, which stucco typically is, it will emulate the real brownstone better in look and probably texture.
We could like specify that type of stucco be used in this case, if they're going
Right.
to use the CMU then.
We could be very clear about the sort of the expectations of the stucco. We have also on new buildings approved cast stone as a replication for brownstone. And I don't know if you want to talk whether you explored that.
If I could, cast stone is something that we shied away from simply because of the color match and lot inconsistency concerns for a smaller project and a smaller developer like this. We feel
What are the
with
consistency concerns?
just batch consistency with color in the precast.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think the commission has approved both versions of this, and I think you could expect some inconsistency with either approach. More often than not, I think in recent times, cast stone has been the approval. We've also seen things such as terracotta, GFRC intended to imitate brownstone. So there's kind of been a continuous exploration of what to do about making something look like a brownstone facade, but not actually using brownstone. But keeping in mind, it is completely new construction. So even the idea of using a brownstone stucco with the brownstone crushed material in it, it may come with some complications because it's not just patching an area of existing historic material. It's an entirely new facade. So things like expansion joints may need to be introduced with this type of new construction, things like that we'd have to look at carefully.
Okay. Other questions? All right, let's see if we have public testimony. And I'll note that there is no one in the hearing room to speak on this item, so I will turn it over to Stephen Thompson to take us through our remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. If any members of the public joining via Zoom would like to offer testimony, please use the raise hand function. Jeremy Woodoff, I'll be elevating you to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Jeremy Woodoff, speaking for the Victorian Society, New York. We remind the Commissioners that this brownstone row house was recently demolished following years of neglect by a previous owner. We also point out the failure of the city and this commission to successfully enforce the law that requires landmark properties to be maintained, despite the efforts described by John Weiss. It makes no sense that the city will spend public funds to demolish a designated building, but won't spend those same funds to stabilize it and make it safe. This situation, whether caused by current law or policy, must change, and the Commission should be working to make that happen. Finally, we note that the historic stoop was present at the time the building was demolished. We applaud how quickly this owner has proposed replacing the lost building. We also find appropriate the replication of the historic building. However, without a stoop, the building as designed is not appropriate. It makes no sense to replicate a building with what appears to be an egregiously inappropriate alteration. To repeat, replicating a transitional neo-Grec style brownstone row house in this district is appropriate, but this building type is meant to have a stoop. Building a new one without a stoop will look like and is a mistake. It's especially ironic as the Commission now sees many applications to reconstruct missing stoops. The building is not proposed to have an elevator, so accessibility to the upper floors is not an issue. Access to the basement unit can be in the traditional way under the stoop or by changing one of the two basement windows into a door. Alternatively, the applicant can consider a building in a different traditional style appropriate to the district that accommodates a stylistically congruent entrance at the ground floor. There is little information about the stucco facade. Is it stucco on masonry, wood, or styrofoam? Why is it proposed to be painted? We are a bit astonished that for a building whose almost entire appearance is based on the material of the facade, there is so little information either about how it will be constructed or what the material will actually be. We don't think that an approval should be given before that information is in hand. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we will have Lucy Levine.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. 28 7th Avenue had been on HDC's Buildings at Risk list. We were sad to see the historic building on this site demolished in 2023, but we are glad that a new building will fill in the street wall here. We are doubly glad that the new building will offer multifamily housing. We appreciate the need for an accessible grade-level entrance for this multifamily building. HDC strongly supports universal design and accessibility interventions on historic buildings and in historic districts. Because this is a new building and the grade level entrance is an inherent and purposeful part of the design, HDC believes more consideration should be given to the design and detailing of the building's plinth level so that the ground floor entrance looks intentional rather than as if it were created by removing a stoop. The reason the grade level entrance currently looks like an alteration is that the rest of the building is designed to replicate the recently demolished historic building at 28 7th Avenue, which had a stoop. HDC wonders if it is possible for this new building to accommodate an accessible entrance at grade and a stoop. If not, and the only entrance to the building will be at grade as proposed, then the ground floor entrance should be further articulated and the proposed material should be clarified. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. If any other members of the public joining us via Zoom would like to speak, please use the raise hand function. Seeing none, I will note that Brooklyn Community Board 6 recommends approval.
And
I see that we now have a raised hand from Aaron Malka. Aaron Malka, I'll be promoting you to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
all right, and I believe this is the applicant, so we'll ask if you'd like to address the comments we've heard in the testimony.
And Malka, if you will please unmute yourself, you'll have the ability to speak.
Hi, good morning to everyone. This is Shai. I'm with Aaron, the same Zoom call. We're both here. Good morning to everyone. I'd like to speak first of all in regards to the exterior stoop. We have no issue constructing this stoop. The only issue that we're going to encounter is going over the property line, which we're doubting DOB will approve us and DOT for this matter. We had the discussion in the beginning, and that's going to be an issue with the city. That's subject number one. Subject number two, which we will provide, but I can shortly explain, is the brownstone stucco. So someone mentioned that it's constructed with layers, and he's correct. We have experience in brownstone landmark homes done before, some as alteration, some as new buildings. I can provide addresses for this. And yes, there is certain codes that needs to be provided on masonry wall, and it's typically 4 to 5 layers. When the last layer before coating with the color, that's a scratch coat. The color to match the surrounding building is going to be chosen by Landmark prior to installation. We'll provide detail in regards to this from previous work done by Landmark, approved by Landmark, and I believe that's going to solve and resolve lots of the questions you have in regards to this. So these are the two, and one more thing, I'm sorry. In terms of the construction walls, we provide that details also. We have everything already lined up with DOB. It was filed already with DOB, awaiting approvals, first of all by you guys, and then DOB will approve the rest. If you have any questions for me, you're more than welcome to ask.
Okay, thank you. Was there anything you'd like to add?
I just was going to clarify a little bit the stoop and the ADA topics extending out onto the street. It's very difficult with the 5 feet that we have from our building setback from the property line to achieve accessible entrance under a stoop in our condition,
Okay,
if not impossible.
all right. Commissioners, any other final questions? All right, then we'll close the hearing and begin our discussion. Commissioner Lutfi, would you make a motion to close the hearing? Thank you. Commissioner Chu, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so, this is the site of a building that was formerly a demolition by neglect, which we worked very, very hard and unfortunately were unable to save. I do want to emphasize how hard this agency works with our sister agencies and with owners in this situation and these situations. And these situations are really extremely rare. Of the 38,000 buildings and sites under our jurisdiction, these are very rare instances. We work very hard on them. Unfortunately, we did lose this building. The new owner is proposing to construct a new building in this site that would closely recall the historic building, but would be a multifamily house building. And because of that, has certain ADA requirements. And I would note that the commission has approved buildings that recall historic brownstones without a stoop, with a basement entry, for this very same reason, to allow for a multiple dwelling. And also I would note that this is something that we see historically happen to row houses when they were converted to multiple dwellings. Historically, the stoops were typically removed and basement entrances were created. So I think the question of stoop or not should be discussed, but I do want to note that there are historic examples as well as past commission actions that have approved basement entries. With respect to details, I think we'll have a lot of discussion about that. And then I think, we'll discuss again some more of the materials. It is hard without a wall section to understand how the stucco application would work, but we'll have a discussion about that. So Vice Chair Bland, would you like to start this one?
I will. there's been an extraordinary history here, which I was completely unaware of. Sad history, but I do support the chair's recitation of how this agency works very hard to avoid these kinds of activities that happen so rarely. Ordinarily, I would look at an empty site, this architect, design-focused architect, as an opportunity to design a new building in a contemporary way. That's just me. But I want to emphasize something that Commissioner Jefferson, I think, first mentioned, which I wholeheartedly support, and that is from an urbanistic point of view, how appropriate this is, almost a scenographic point of view, you might say. The building on the right, which I understand from a quick conversation with Commissioner Carroll, was approved, I guess, but has some issues, let's say, here. If you can forget the details and just blur your eyes, it's sort of a nice ending to the block. It has this little cupola up at the top, and it sort of ends the game. Is it appropriate that it replace something that would have been original, yet another one of these original buildings? Surely not, but we have what we have, and as an end, and therefore I think the idea of presenting this application as a new design that highly recognizes the context to its left, let's call it, is appropriate. Again, lost opportunity for a new design, but even when we get these new designs, they are so often fraught with problems and so forth. So in the hands of a master, they're great. In the hands of something less than that, which most of us mortals are, it's can be a difficult slog to get it to be right. So therefore, it should be easier to get this right, because so much of what we're looking at is on the left. Notwithstanding the commentary, which I've already asked about and others have talked about and staff has talked about on the record about the quality of the stucco, I'm going to suspend that in my conversation and just suggest that if we approve this, that somehow working with staff, that it can be done the right way. I'll just suspend that from my conversation. Others can maybe bring it up. What I do want to talk about, though, is the idea of no stoop. I think it's perfectly appropriate to have no stoop. And it's a visual thing as much for me, or a contextual thing, as it is a code issue, which I hadn't really even thought about. But now I get it. Of course, it is a code issue for multi-dwelling. If it were even possible, the applicant has suggested it's not possible easily to make a stoop and then have a universal access under it because of dimensional issues. Even if it were possible to do that, it would make the stoop kind of an irrelevancy. This kind of a stoop to nowhere, because the entry to the building would have to be on the lower level. Now, is it appropriate to have no stoop? I think it is. I was going to say half, I have no idea, but certainly so many brownstone buildings, maybe we can say regrettably, but they lost their stoop in historic districts, all over this city where there are brownstone buildings. They've lost their stoop for 50, 60, 70, 80 years. It's part of the gestalt. It's part of the environment. When we have applicants who come to us and want to put the stoop back, It's wonderful. We just had one earlier this morning. But that doesn't mean it's not appropriate to not put a stoop in, at least from my viewpoint. However, when that is done, I think and looking at those as models, those stoopless, formerly stooped brownstones, but now stoopless. There's some bad examples, of course, horrible examples, but there's some really good examples. Therefore, the entryway, long way around getting to this point of mine, the entryway has to be really well done as the entry to the building. And I think this is still a little under detailed and could use a little more work. But otherwise, as long as the detailing, and it's very hard to tell because we don't have the section yet, et cetera. It's very hard to tell if that can be done, but working with our wonderful staff, I think it can be done if we approve it at this level. So therefore, I'm going to say I can approve it as documented.
Thank you, Commissioner Chapin.
Well, I think Commissioner Bland has discussed quite fully the issues of concern to me, and I think in the appropriate way. So I'll just say I echo what he has to say rather than going through it again.
Commissioner Lutfi.
I'm just going to add a little. I do think Fred did a great job. I just want to go back to the fact that was referred to a couple of times that a corner was sort of a tragic corner. I mean, I wasn't quite there when the crash happened, but I, know all about it. And it was actually a really big deal in the community when that corner building was built. I really, forgetting about, what it looks like or I think the community felt like this, it was a loss that they lived with for so long that when something went up, they were so relieved. Then unfortunately, there was another casualty. And these things happen. I mean, I know that we did the best we could without even questioning it. And my sense here is that this applicant did the right thing in terms of how they approach this. And I think, as Fred said, I completely concur. Based on what's on the corner, I think it wouldn't make sense to do something totally new. It makes much more sense to follow what is to the south of that building. And overall, the applicant on the facade has done a very, very good job. This is 7th Avenue, by the way. 7th Avenue, at this particular place, has this mix of residential, and then there's also commercial. So it's like a kind of a funny transition onto 7th Avenue. And there is the residential continues as you go further south, but it's not as prominent as it is here. So I think it's great that the applicant kind of solidified this residential anchor. And also, as Fred said, throughout the city and actually in this neighborhood, it is not uncommon for there to be ground, no stoop for a ground floor entry to a multifamily building. By the way, I'm thrilled at a time when there's no residential being built in this city that there's going to be residential here. And we have actually dealt with instances where people have renovated brownstones or townhouses and put stoops. We either worked with an existing stoop or put stoops in, where this whole issue of accessibility has been a little bit of a nightmare. So what's happening here is that there is accessibility at the ground floor where it should be. And I think the other thing that's happening, which is good for what this building is that, you know, the usable space is being maximized for its multifamily purpose, which is very important. And it's being maximized without compromising the integrity of what's going on from the design of the facade. Now, the 2 weak points, which were raised, which I think the applicant needs to work with staff on, are absolutely this entrance. It could definitely be, it could be accessible, but not look like some slapped on commercial entrance when the applicant has done such a good job with the rest of the facade. And also I agree that whatever this facade is going to be ultimately produced with from a material standpoint, that really has to be done very closely with staff so that it really meets the kind of standards that a location like this and a building like this would require.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu?
Yeah, I don't want to add too much to a lot which was spoken, and I think, well, my only comment again to support the relook at this entry. I understand that the ADA accessible entry was not possible because of the head clearance of the stoop above. That makes sense to me. But I do want to say that and I agree with Fred that the approach here, I think I highly support. It's a contextual, and it's really not drawing attention to itself. It's really what it's trying to do is fit in with the fabric. However, contemporary times do want to make accessible entries more welcoming. And back when these were designed, that was not something they thought about at all. And that's why the parlor is generous and tall and welcoming. But because of that use of the aesthetic, it diminutizes the ground floor entry and really smashes it into what proportionally doesn't feel so welcoming. So I would like the applicant to look at another facade entry staff, something that might celebrate that as really the front door of the building.
Commissioner Master?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with Commissioner Bland, who spoke so eloquently. I think that it's appropriate. You know, they need to work with staff on the entryway as well as the stucco cladding. But other than that, I think they've done a great job.
Commissioner Jefferson?
Conceptually, it's a simple project. The concept of it is to make the row dominant and to make the building itself subordinate. And that works. But I wish they had done one more thing, is to make the elements of the building a little bit richer so that the architectural piece of them would be, you could see things change and the doorway could be slightly different. And this elements of the design of elements could then be taken a step further. But it's a conceptually brilliant project.
Commissioner Ginsburg?
Okay, so I agree with much of what's been said. The massing is fine. It's really good that it's a multifamily building. I really think they should come back with full wall sections because I understand you may have been hired as the landmark architect, but how it's constructed is important for what it looks like, and we normally see wall sections. You've created a very difficult task by saying we're going to match the next building. You need to match the next building, and even in some of the renderings when I zoom in, they don't quite match. And so obviously that you could work with staff. The other issue of the stucco color becomes problematic when you're trying to exactly match it. And it's already weathered in the other buildings, which will make the match harder. I would personally, as I agree with Commissioner Bland, have looked at something that was somewhat different in keeping proportions, et cetera. And I think the entrance issue flags the problem because the entrance is more modern. It looks really squashed. And I think if you're keeping with this, the entrance needs to include the window above in some way. So I'm thinking there may be other ways to design it. So the entrance is called out and has some of the significance of the other entrances on the block. I think the no stoop is fine. I would add to all the other discussion that I did a project with a stoop, multifamily building, where the building department wanted a canopy over it and said it could not be uncovered, at which point it's not going to look anything like that. I think there's more flexibility with single family. I'm sort of torn because I think we could approve it and send it to staff, but I sort of think it might be better to come back to us. But I'll leave that to the chair.
Chair Chan?
Yeah, so much has been said and I'm in agreement with, and I think especially the eloquent comments and observation by Vice Chair Bland. I think the approach here is correct one. And I think, you know, the Chinese geomancy master will always be warning about, you know, given the history of the adjoining corner, I think it is what it is. And I think the contextual approach is correct as to what the commission want to do, whether you want a second look, that I leave it up to you.
So I think, thank you all for your comments, and I think they're really helpful. And I think that most commissioners here are comfortable with leaving it to the staff to work out the details of the material and the entryway and how the entryway, you know, can be more prominent and relate to the rest of the facade, particularly the windows above. You know, I do have a question about the material, and I think that if the staff does see a plan for the stucco that maybe has expansion joints or something that we didn't anticipate that doesn't successfully match, then maybe we'll bring it back for the commission to see that wall section and make a determination. But if it falls within the standards of what we've held other new up buildings to, then I think staff can take on these details. And
would the commission also be comfortable if that were the case and they has to instead do cast stone, as we've reviewed before, as an alternative that could be done by the staff as well?
Right, so if the stucco for some reason doesn't work because there are expansion joints or other details that make it look not like the historic fabric, is the commission comfortable with the staff having them switch to a cast stone, which is a material we've also approved as a replication?
Let me just add, I'm not quite responsive to that question, but sort of. It was made, a statement was made earlier about matching the color, but it's not just the color. For me, it's the texture, because a color of stucco, a flat stucco that's the right color, is totally inappropriate here. But the texture, as well as the color.
The texture, the mica,
all of that.
Reflections and
Yeah, and I know that it's been done well. As I cited 43 Pierpont right across the street from me. It's been done well and it's lasted for 20 years at least, maybe more. Anyway, that's what I think is important. And I don't know if you can really honestly get that as the applicant mentioned in a cast stone, but maybe you can because you've had recent experience with it.
Yeah, I think it varies by manufacturer and what's specified and what's kind of demanded, if not required, by the applicant in producing it. So we can look at either way, but I think the applicant wants to pursue the stucco that can be done in a traditional 3-part system, like we see all the time on brownstones, and that can of course include mica and brownstone crushed composite in there.
The good thing, sorry, we're still just chatting. The good thing is that you have the model right next door. So
exactly.
if these details don't measure up, the model is right next door, so it's
Yeah.
not as if we're imagining something. It has to be really right there.
Okay, all right, so I think we'll do an approval with the condition that they work really closely with the staff on the materials and the details and design of the entryway.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. In the matter of 28 7th Avenue Park Slope Historic District. This is an application to construct a new building. I note that the original building on this now vacant lot was demolished following a DOB safety order, that it was one of 5 row houses with neo-Grec and French Second Empire details, that the corner building on the north side of the lot was demolished in 1960 as a result of an airplane crash and rebuilt in the early 1990s pursuant to a certificate of appropriateness, that the building immediately south of the lot retains the decorative elements, cornice and stoop of the original design, while the other 2 in the row have lost stoops and ornament. I recommend approval with some modifications, finding that the construction of a new building on this vacant lot will eliminate a gap in the street wall, that the proposed height and massing of the building will be consistent with the neighboring buildings and will provide a harmonious transition between the 2 buildings that adjoin the site, and that the new cornice aligned with the neighboring cornice in the row. That the proposed French Second Empire neo-Grec details of the facade, including the brownstone colored masonry, the fenestration and the window enframements, the entry surround, and the bracketed metal cornice will match those remaining on other houses in the row, that providing an entryway at the basement level in lieu of a stoop will allow a barrier-free access to the building, and the access ramp hidden behind a knee wall featuring a metal handrail, concrete paving, and a built-in planter will be well integrated and will not disrupt the continuity of the entry of the areaways in the row. That the rear facade will project into the let me start over. That the rear facade will project into the entry yard further than other rear facades in the row, but given the lot's location at the end of the block, nestled against the larger building, the footprint of the building will not diminish the block's central green space. That the rear facade, slightly visible from a gap in the street wall, will be clad in brick to harmonize with other rear facades on the block, and that the overall fenestration will be in keeping with the scale of other rear facades. That the rooftop bulkhead will be clad with a neutral stuccoed finish and will not be visible from the public thoroughfare, and that the new building will not detract from the special historic and architectural character of the streetscape or the Park Slope Historic District. However, I note that the proposed facade will be, I guess I can read that, clad with brownstone stucco over CMU, raising questions about the longevity of the material and the crispness of the details, and that the main entry door and enframement are not fully resolved. Therefore, I recommend that the facade be clad, working very closely with staff in a brownstone colored cast stone or a 3-coat stucco finish with color and texture aligning with the neighboring building, and that the main entry door and its enframement be restudied in consultation with staff.
Thank you. Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
Chair
Aye.
Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Abstain.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi, Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 8 in favor and none opposed and 1 abstention, the motion passes.
That's approved. Thank you. We'll move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 6, LPC 25-04543, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 1171, lot 56, 186 Underhill Avenue in the Prospect Heights Historic District. This is a Renaissance Revival style store and flats building built circa 1915. The application is to install signage.
Mouse to click on the screen.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Pohanka. Everybody calls me Mac. I'm from Noble Signs and the New York Sign Museum. My clients, Radio Bakery, pushed through their storefront at staff level. They're located at 186 Underhill Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. It's this location that is the blue storefront with the previous non-landmark compliant storefront. They've already replaced their storefront to meet the landmark staff level approval. Here's the zone and the storefront beforehand. We're here to talk about the signage because we're proposing putting signage in the sign band above. For context, if you see this full landmark designated street stretch, we have a long stretch of buildings that have in some cases been converted to residential. We'll see more of that later. But most of the storefronts along here are slowly being brought back into the landmark view and compliance. So below is the staff level storefront that's been approved. We're actually doing less painting on this than this, but this is as approved. Originally, we were proposing our top sign to cover the full sign band to match up with these architectural column pieces here and here. So it wouldn't go the full storefront, but it would match the architectural bump outs. LPC requested that we reduce the width to just the storefront. So we reduced it to match the storefront, which brings the height down between the two lintels above and below. This is an aluminum pan sign with some hand painted details and then trim cap lettering. Very historic, classic style for Brooklyn. We specialize in hand painted gold leaf and neon signage. We do everything in historic approach. And our clients approached us specifically because they wanted something that had this historic, very New York aesthetic. We don't use fonts. We design all of our signs by hand. We design our type by hand. And we sort of do all this in conjunction with our side nonprofit project, the New York Sign Museum. We recently helped to save the Smith Bar in Midtown, and we are working to do a lot of work with saving these historic style signs, and at the same time working to try and make more of them to keep the New York aesthetic alive. So you can see this is the architect's rendering, so it doesn't match the final storefront. This is their earlier one. So this gives you an idea of exactly what we're going for, just a very classic, basic trim cap letter with a dark letter face, nothing too crazy. We're going to do a custom aluminum frame for it. The commission has requested that we anchor only into the grout. That's fine. As an aluminum sign, this is fairly lightweight. We don't need to go overboard with anything. So it should be fairly simple in that regard. The pan is only 1 inch deep, and then the trim comes out another ½ an inch or so. So, sorry, we're going to go to a 3 inch depth trim to get a little more of that historic look and less of the prefab. So you can see our letter height, size, and everything meets the landmark specifications. This shows you a little bit of our build out, so you can see the 1 inch of the raised letters on the face. We'll have L brackets behind and above that will anchor into the masonry. Pretty straightforward, nothing too complicated engineering wise. We'll make sure to fasten all the way around, as the wind has been getting increasingly complicated in our trade in the past year. So if you look at the way this block looked in the 40s, we had a really beautiful commercial street with a lot of different types of historical signs. Some covered the full sign band, some were partial. There's raised letters, hand painted, fully fabricated. There's an array of really beautiful work here. This is the kind of stuff that we work to try and sell to our clients and bring back to these neighborhoods. These photos really won over the community board a lot because that block is incredibly blank right now. I know they're working to try and get people to turn over the storefronts and make them a little nicer, but there's only a few open businesses along there. This is what it looks like right now. So you have a hand-painted cleaners sign, but you have this convenience store at the end, which doesn't comply at all. Maybe it's the last one outside of the section, but it's hard to know. Obviously, the green storefront and red have been redone to be more historic styles. And then so we have the blue storefront, and then you have more that are boarded up, and then you have the nice laundromat sign, which is another similar historic sign. And then the one on the corner is not a landmark. That's a older, different style. So when we look at these 1940s photos, we see a commercial strip that represents something completely different from what's there now. And so a lot of our work is about trying to make these storefronts match this. We understand the commission's concern about the decorative brick detail up above. New York and New York signage is really unique because almost all of our commercial strips have sign bands. Our city does not look like Washington, D.C. It doesn't look like Boston. It's why we started the New York Sign Museum, because we don't want our signs being shipped off to other cities. We think the aesthetics of the city that we have are due to very specific architectural things that tied in conjunction with the commercial needs of the businesses. So we see these old classic strips as something to seek after. There's very little plastic. There's no LEDs. There's none of this stuff going on. We didn't propose lighting here. They're just doing gooseneck lights at the top. They're a bakery. They were recently rated by New York Times, one of the top 10 bakeries in the country in their Greenpoint location. This is their second location. They live in New York. They raise families here. They're local business owners. They sell out of bread every day. They're not going to be open at night. They will be closed by then. So the amount of lighting in the evening will be minimal one way or the other. There were some suggestions made by the commission in terms of how to deal with the sign ban if we didn't do a panel sign. As you can see, let's see, where's the best way to see this? The sign band is not flat. There's 2-inch relief. So suggestions for pin mount letters or anything like that won't work because they won't be even. There was another suggestion to put a mesh across the whole thing with letters on it. In my opinion, I would really not like to see that happen to our city. I think it's an aesthetic I've seen in some other places to be able to institute LED neon and other cheap sign replacements. And I think it just doesn't fit architecturally or in terms of the trade that we practice. I find it to be inappropriate. So having a lightweight sign that anchors to the mortar and fits the style of the neighborhood, I think is in our design opinion the best way forward. So I'll go back so you can actually see the storefront again. We've been in business for 11 years. We've done a lot of DOB and landmark signs. We know that there's some sign types that are approved by landmarks, but are not necessarily historic styles like halo letters and stuff like that. When we're trying to do historic signs, we prefer to stay away from those. If it's a regular contemporary business that's in a place that wants that style letter, it's not a problem. But if we're approached to make historic signage for our clients, we prefer to take a historic approach in the aesthetics and the design.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners? Yes, Vice Chair Bland.
I missed the very beginning of your very interesting presentation, but what is the green material?
It's aluminum, painted aluminum.
It's painted.
Yeah, we use enamel, we spray, so it UV safe, lasts pretty much forever. Like we have signs that have been up for 11 years and you get a little bit of fading, but they're very, very solid. We use catalyzed enamel sign painting paint, one shot's the product.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lutfi.
What's the problem with putting the sign within a more traditional sign band and exposing, the lovely decorative brickwork? Well, why doesn't that work?
Well, historically, the brickwork would have been the sign band. The yellow, there's the blue down below. The previous business covered the transom windows, and the transom windows were requested to go back in. And it's a bakery that's open during the day, so they want as much sunlight in as possible. And hanging a sign in front of those windows and having the back visible from the inside is something that we've done in some cases, but is not really very appealing. So we wanted to try and have something that architecturally fit and was respectful, but made the space a little more inviting. If you've been in these blocks before, the ceiling height is not that high for a commercial space, and it's oriented a little bit funny. So getting sunlight into the space is a little trickier.
Right, so these buildings don't have a blank sign band, so they have storefront with a band above it that has the decorative brickwork. And historically, that was used as a sign band.
And one other thing that is we were taking into account, let's see if there's a place where you can see it well. The brickwork in the sign bands with the stucco is very patchwork. So if you were to try and do letters contained up there, getting contrast for proper legibility is really difficult because you don't have an even tone in the sign band. Obviously, if you're in Soho or something like that, you have iron and it's easier to get contrast, but design wise, it makes for a more complicated project.
Commissioner Chu?
Yeah, so the application is just for the signage, it's not the storefront.
The storefront was passed at a staff level.
Oh, okay.
And they went through, I think, 5 revisions and got that all.
Really?
Because the previous people had done something that was just so out of line that getting that block, the lower block at the right height and stuff was a little fussy. And so they've done all that. That storefront is in. They put it in yesterday. We were lucky enough to have nice weather now. Yeah,
Okay.
they're imminent with opening.
So my other question is, in the elevation, if you can go to your elevation for a minute. Yeah, so you obviously position the signage over the glass glazed portion of the storefront below. But if you do that, isn't there like elements, detail, white bricks in there that like,
There will be partial.
and then it'll be like half of it is gonna be covered only?
That's why we had originally tried to propose going the full width and matching those columns rather than matching the storefront, because there is a diamond that will
Right,
be
there's a diamond right
interrupted.
at the edge.
Yeah, so what we were proposing originally is like sort of 4 inches inset from the property
Right.
lines, because there's those raised columns. But in our initial notes, we were given pushback against that. So we went to this approach, which matches the storefront width. It doesn't actually match the glass, it matches the metal glazing. So we came to the full width of the.
But there's no render, the only way I can see it is if I look at your photo right below the red is the sign. And that looks like it's uncomfortably and awkwardly shaving off one of the diamonds, so I can't see this as a composed elevation.
Right. And then I think in the historic photos, many of them were full width, but there were some partial width. I don't know if they had any relationship to the.
No, I think they just were, if you look at the historic ones, the ones that are partial, maybe the laundry one, it looks like they match the columns, but not the ones on the other.
Yeah.
But they did respect that modulation somehow back there.
Yeah, but then it's a sign that doesn't relate to the storefront, right? It's a little weird.
Yeah,
It's complicated.
I have to say that the ones that look the most beautiful are the ones that look like they're painted wood. There's a green and then there's a maroon one that seemed beautifully set in there, but this is a totally different condition.
Well, we seek to have our signs look like that, but because of the rot issue, we try and avoid using much wood, but try and have everything look very clean and painted.
Right, I was referring to the storefront.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, the wooden storefronts
Yeah,
over there
which
are
to me
very
is
nice.
just
And there's
as
one new
adorable.
one that
Yeah.
is quite spectacular.
Yeah.
They've done very nice work over there.
Okay.
All right, other questions?
Comment.
Yes, Commissioner Chen.
Just want to commend you on paying the kind of attention to this type of details.
Thank
I
you.
wish most
Appreciate it.
neighborhood could use this type of, detailing.
As we came out of sign painting, as our sort of found way into this business, we were a little shocked every step of the way to find out how the industry was running. When we go to sign conventions, there's very little for us there. Yeah.
All right. If there are no other questions, we'll go to testimony, and I'll note that there is no one in the hearing room at this time, so I'll turn it over to Stephen to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you. If anyone joining us via Zoom would like to offer testimony, please use the raise hand function. Jeremy Woodoff, I will be elevating you to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeremy Woodoff. I'm speaking for the Victorian Society, New York. First, let me say that Noble Signs has a second application on today's hearing, and we have more to say about this wonderful company in our testimony at the end of the day. But regarding this application, when we first saw this proposal, we were concerned that the new sign would conceal a portion of the decorative masonry set between the storefront and the windowsills on the second floor. However, we then saw the excellent historic photos the applicant provided. The tax photos show that there's a long tradition of signs in this position on this row, and that the best ones work well architecturally with the building. But we don't feel that the proposed sign is in the best location. The applicant provided 4 tax photos. We feel that the historic signs at 188 and 192 Underhill, which were centered on their facades, enhanced those facades. We believe this new sign should also be symmetrically placed on the building. Its placement should also respect the underlying masonry pattern and not leave random bits of it exposed. And in that regard, we think that the applicant's original proposal, provided the sign band remained at the current width, was actually far superior to what's now being proposed. Some members of our committee questioned the use of a plastic sign here. Those great-looking historic signs were all either metal or painted wood. However, others felt the jaunty period design of the proposed sign is enhanced by the use of plastic. We look forward to hearing the commissioner's comments on this proposed material. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next is Lucy Levine.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC supports and appreciates this appropriate sign based on historic precedents. We thank Noble Signs for their work preserving historic signs and heritage craft. We think the application would be even better if it adhered to the applicant's original proposal, which was to stretch the sign across the full width of the facade so that it would relate more directly to the symmetry of the building above. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we'll have Mary Shuford. Mary Shuford, I'll be promoting you to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Schufer. I represent the Prospect Heights Neighborhood Development Corporation. We are hereby presenting our testimony for the Certificate of Appropriateness application for 186 Underhill Avenue. The storefront is one of 11 three-story brick frontage store and flat buildings built around 1915 and designed in Renaissance Revival style. The architects and developers are unknown. While all of the original storefronts and doors have been replaced, the upper facades remain largely intact. The plan changes for the storefront have been, as mentioned, been approved by the LPC staff. However, LPC is requiring the signage proposed by the application to be reviewed by the commission at its hearing. The signage has been designed to complement the approved plans for the storefront. It takes into account the existing signage on the block and is consistent with other storefronts. PHNDC has no objection to this application. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. If any other members of the public joining via Zoom would like to speak, please use the raise hand function. Seeing none, I will note that Brooklyn Community Board 8 recommends approval. Thank you.
The testimony actually was largely supportive of a sign that actually extends the full the building. And I know you already said earlier that was your original design, and at the direction of staff, you reduced it to expose some of the decorative brickwork. So is there anything else you would like to add before we move to our discussion?
No, we were very pleased to have support from the community and what we were trying to propose. I think you all understand our intentions here.
Okay. But there was one comment about plastic, but your sign is a painted metal, right?
The letters are acrylic trim cap, like, so what you see in your sort of like classic like 60s pizza sign, it's that style, more conventional for like a bakery or pizza or something like that. But we went with one of a darker color, so it doesn't look like that. We don't.
Okay. And it's about an inch thick.
It's an inch thick. Yeah.
It's an inch thick. Okay.
Yeah, with the like the trim cap edge that traps it all in, so it doesn't look like cut letter or anything like that. It's a finished edge with the raised bull nose.
Right. Okay. All right. Any other final questions? Okay, let's move to our discussion. Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Chu. Would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so this is a proposal for a sign in a band that has some patterned brickwork above the storefront that was historically used as a sign band, and we've seen those historic photographs. They're proposing, as the current application is, a sign that aligns with the width of the storefront, but had originally sought approval for a wider sign, which was recommended in the testimony that went the full width of the building. The sign is painted metal and with applied acrylic letters that have finished edges and a little bullnose detail. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Master, would you like to start this one?
Sure. First, I want to commend the signage company for your hard work. It looks like you've done many iterations and that you've been very thoughtful about how you put this together. And we really appreciate that. At first, I was a little disturbed that this sign covered the brickwork, which to me seemed very important to the character of this building. However, I think some of the public testimony noted that traditionally this neighborhood had sign bans in this location. And I think there are other stores in this neighborhood that also have sign bans in exactly the same location. Also, I think the applicant had said that putting it on the transom would not work because of, covering up the sunlight that's coming into the store. So I think that they addressed that. So I can actually find this appropriate with the sign in the sign band because there is historic precedence for this. In addition, I think some of the testimony had said, why doesn't it go the full, I guess, length of the sign band, which would make it look a little less awkward. And my understanding is that that was suggested by the staff. So I can also find that appropriate. So overall, I think that they've done a good job in making the case, and I can find this sign and the placement appropriate.
Okay. But the thought of going the full width?
I would be fine with it going the full width as well, but I guess it was suggested by the staff. So I do think that it would look a little bit better if it went the full width. So, yeah.
Commissioner Jefferson? And one thing I do also want to point out is
Yeah.
okay. And one thing I did want to also note was that the applicant did state that we're going to install this into the mortar joints so that even if they're, to the extent they're covering patterned brickwork, it would be preserved and no damage would come to it, and it would be reversible. Commissioner Ginsburg.
So I really liked the sign, but I wasn't sure it was in the right place and you convinced me. And in terms of the length, the proportions are really nice at this length. And so I worry if you stretched it out, it wouldn't look as good. And then also, I appreciate wanting to keep the clear story clear so light gets into the space. So I find this appropriate.
Commissioner Chin.
Agree with all the comments. I think, my concern was about the spacing. I haven't seen the full length design, but obviously you don't want it to look stretched. I think it's the spacing, the style and the attention to detail is really well done here.
Vice Chair Bland.
I've just enjoyed the presentation and getting to know this company. Maybe they've been here for us and I was asleep at the wheel, but what a refreshing take. When I asked the question about the greenish background, I was hoping it was going to be something like Bakelite or something like that, or maybe an automobile finish. But maybe it is almost like an automobile finish, a painted aluminum. So just extraneous comments of something that I really admire and think is perfect the way it is.
Commissioner Chapin.
Well, I'm going to be a dissenting view on this. I like the sign. I think it's perfectly fine, but I think that the decorative brickwork band along this row, and it's particularly obvious in the first photo, should be protected and should be able to be seen. And I understand the issue about the light into the building, but perhaps the sign could have been translucent, and just had the lettering be dark, so I just, I don't feel comfortable with approving it over the decorative brickwork in this particular case, though I don't have any problem with the sign itself. And so that's where I'm at.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Page 10 for me. So I'll check. But if it's difficult, don't worry about it. I can talk about it.
Or do you want me to?
So I just think it's important to talk about the context when we look at this project. I think the applicant, first of all, is doing something very important. They are going to, make their home a theoretical commercial strip that really still has not taken root. And so how a retail shop or business enters the area, literally how you sort of embrace the community is very important. And your physical presence, sort of that mark that you're going to make on the strip is very important, because if it's all done well and both things are important, then you're going to not only attract customers, but you're going to attract other businesses, which this neighborhood, which the strip sorely needs. And when you look at the two buildings, the two retail shops or whatever they are, I'm not 100% sure, next to the cleaners, they really do not have, they're not identified that well. So unfortunately, even though they might be a positive presence on the landscape, they're not communicating that, and they're not doing the two things that they would have been wonderful for them to do. I'm sure they're providing wonderful service to sort of change in a positive way the look and feel, and just the environment, like the welcomeness to the area. So let me say that I think that it's great that the business, that the bakery wants to come here. And I think that in general, I think the sign is fantastic, just conceptually, whether it's shorter or longer. I think it's great. So I, at first, was a little hesitant about having the sign, on that decorative sign band, but the more I looked at this photo, I thought every business on the strip needs to be able to make use of that. And as long as those businesses protect what's underneath, working with staff, then that should be just fine. It is a little weird that the sign covers half of the diamond, which is not really shown on that rendering. Like, what?
We didn't do that elevation. Something that we.
You weren't allowed to talk, but I appreciate it. So, and then if you look at that, at the, I don't know if it might have been page 12. We don't have to go there, but that showed the older with Bohack and some of these old businesses, these delicatessens with the signs that stretched across. I mean, they kind of look great. So while I can accept it this way, I also think it would look great if it went the whole across the entire frontage. And I'm not even 100% sure that you have to stretch the lettering. I mean, I don't know why it couldn't just be the color or, have another light somewhere. So I'm sorry to just not be definitive, but I think the most important thing is that that sign band is okay. And I think working with staff to make sure that the brickwork is protected. And I think also to explore, again, the idea of possibly, if depending upon what the other commissioners say, going the full width is okay with me too, as well as leaving it the way it is.
Okay. Commissioner Chu?
I prefer the centered on the facade of the building itself, so either the full width or stopping at the outset of those two pieces of evidence.
Okay, all right. Just quickly, show of hands. I think that we have the consensus here, or enough to approve it as presented. Would we also have 6 for it to be the full width? Either way, is everybody comfortable with that? Well, Diana, I know that wouldn't be with you, but okay. So I think we can leave it to the staff to work with them on centering it over the storefront or over the facade.
In the matter of LPC 25-04543, 186 Underhill Avenue, Prospect Heights Historic District, a Renaissance Revival style store and flats building built circa 1915, application is to install signage. I note that the building style, scale, and materials and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Prospect Heights Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the flagpole to be removed is not a significant architectural feature, that there is historic precedence for signage at the decorative brickwork above storefronts at this row, and that the proposed sign will be typical in terms of materials, details, and finishes, and will be installed at mortar joints at plain areas of masonry piers, thereby limiting damage to the brickwork, and that the overall amount of signage will not overwhelm the building. I recommend that the applicant work with staff to work on either centering the sign and determining the length of the sign.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
So second.
Mark?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Nay.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 8 in favor and 1 opposed, the motion passes.
All right. We'll move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 7, LPC 25-05485. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 1159, lot 88, 273 Park Place in the Prospect Heights Historic District. This is a Renaissance revival, Romanesque revival style row house designed by William H. Reynolds, built in circa 1898. The application is to construct rooftop and rear yard additions, modify a bay window, and relocate a stained glass window.
Commissioners will note that our presenter is remote. So if you could just please state your name for the record and then you may begin.
My name is Tom Vandenbout. I'm representing NV Design Architects. Did you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Tom Vandenbout. I'm representing NV Design Architects for this application at 273 Park Place in the Prospect Heights Historic District.
Okay, you can please go ahead. You can hit the screen and advance the slides, Tom.
Okay. Let's see. Can I? There we go. Yeah, this application is a vertical and horizontal additions to the last house in a row of 7. They all have, the most significant feature I think that they share is an oriel window at the parlor floor on the rear facade. Just as a general outline, what we're proposing is a penthouse addition to the roof that hugs the interior lot line. It's an exposed wall since this is the last house on the row. So we're setting that back from its side wall as well as the front and the back to limit its visibility. And then at the rear yard, we're proposing an extension of just the garden floor, the basement floor in this case, and keeping it clear of the oriel, which we're essentially restoring, although we're adding a door to it to allow access to the terrace at the top of that extension. So this is the whole series of tax photos to show the sort of variety in that row. Essentially, all we're doing here is restoring the facade and changing the windows. All that's happening at staff level. But you can see in the survey, what's unique, I think, about these lots is their depth, which is 131 feet deep, a full sort of 31 feet deep, at least deeper than the typical. So there's photos of the front. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of street construction going on, but you can see the exposed sidewall to the west, and then in the rear, you can see the large, full width oriel window at the second floor. Those are shared. The same element is shared by all 7 to the east. They've all been clad. This is clad in vinyl, as is a small extension that it's sort of engaged to and sits on below. So this is being renovated as a 2-unit house. There would be a single duplex at the garden and the parlor floor, with most of the living, open living, kitchen, dining on that parlor floor, going out to a terrace in the back that is above the extension, which, in order to be clear of the oriel and not really engage with it structurally, we've dropped approximately 18 inches. This also allows for making that garden floor 3 bedrooms, with an interior bedroom that gets its light and air from from above at that terrace level. Then above that is I guess it's a duplex plus penthouse or a triplex. You can see it's set back from the rear, the front, and the side. We've sloped the roof, you'll see that in a moment, to keep it out of the penthouse, out of any sort of public view. There's the existing section. This is the proposed section. So there are sight lines that are evidenced by the photos of the mock-ups, that you cannot see the penthouse itself. The last slides show that there is minimal visibility of the associated railing at the roof. Also shown here is the rear yard addition, which is 23 feet in depth from the back of the house, not the oriel, not including the oriel, and is pushed down 18 inches to have that, again, clear the oriel itself in terms of its structure. This block plan shows there are a limited number of rear yard extensions or large apartment buildings may construct in intruding on that rear yard. In the middle of that is sort of the normal required rear yard, the 30 feet, but obviously on both sides there's a dramatically larger yard that exists. We're proposing 23 feet. The nearest neighbors that have a single story addition are down at the other end of the row. I believe that's at I forget the numbers there, 289 and 291, or at any rate, those are single story additions that are approximately 18'9" instead of the 23 we're proposing. They're essentially lining up with a series of additions that are further to their east, that are 2- and 3-story additions. Our hope was that there would be some acknowledgement that we're pushing down our single story, and that we could get some additional depth to our addition, given that it's essentially just above the fence line instead of a full story at the garden. So here's a series of elevations, existing and proposed, that show the two neighbors to the left and our proposal at the right. There's existing stained glass transoms at the 3 windows. We're retaining those, proposing to reclad and rebuild, or rebuild the cladding on the oriel itself, changing the single window at the center into a single door. There are a couple sections at the bottom there that show most specifically the roof of our addition sliding underneath the existing oriel. And then there's some evidence to show that there's no existing cladding beneath the current vinyl siding. There's no detail there. So we have essentially made that up based on what we can see very minimally 2 doors over, with a new wood cornice sort of dentil, a concealed integrated gutter, and horizontal wood siding at the oriel. So those are larger elevations of this situation. The back elevation of the extension with a very small sort of I guess it's a parapet detail that conceals the a few inches of the assembly that forms the pedestals and pavers on the roof of the extension, and then a stair down to the garden beyond. Oh, sorry. And then up above, you can, oops. Well, it's deep. How do I go back? There we go. No. Sorry. You can see here at the penthouse, it's very simple. We've centered the window between the windows below. That's obviously set back. It's all in a stucco system with a railing that essentially aligns to the chimney. We're extending the chimney to the left, which is also not visible. There are the sight lines and elevations of that side of the house. There's the mock-up on the roof on the left-hand side, and then just the wall that would otherwise be visible of the extension on the right. These are our views with the mock-up in place. Nothing is visible, of course, on that on the house side of the street. And then at the bottom, there's a small gap between the house and the corner apartment building, very seasonally and minimally visible above the fence. There should be a little bit of the height of that extension visible. From across the street, you don't see the penthouse itself from anywhere, but in this last slide, you see a sliver of the railing. Oops, how did that happen? A sliver of the railing to the north of the chimney. If that's a problem, we believe we can reposition that railing to make it completely invisible. And that's it.
Thank you. All right, any questions, commissioners? No, okay. And I'll note that there is no one in the hearing room to testify, so I'll turn it over to Stephen to see if there are any remote participants.
Thank you. Anyone joining us via Zoom, please use the raise hand function if you would like to offer testimony. All right, Mary Shuford, I'll be promoting you to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon, Mary Shuford again, from PHNDC, Prospect Heights Neighborhood Development Council. We are presenting testimony on the certificate of appropriateness for the application for 273 Park Place. It's one of a group of Renaissance Revival style row houses designed and built by William Reynolds. The application is for a complete renovation of the building interior, replacement of windows, and restoration of the facade. The application also includes the removal of an existing small one-story rear extension to be replaced by a full-width one-story 23-foot deep extension with a roof deck. A rooftop addition is also planned, which will be visible from Park Place. The rear extension will be 18 feet deep and 18 feet wide and 23 feet deep, with a rooftop deck at the rear of the first floor. Doorway to the deck will replace the existing center rear window, maintaining the existing stained glass transom and lowering the sill. The extension exterior finish will be stucco. There will be a painted metal railing with solid wood top rail surrounding the deck and a stairway to the rear yard that will match the deck railing. The rooftop addition will include a bedroom, full bath, and closet with an adjoining deck alongside the penthouse. The structure will be 9 feet 10 inches wide by 24 deep. The exterior finish will be stucco to match the existing stucco on the rear facade of the building. Since the proposed rear yard extension at 3 feet deep is deeper than any other extension on the block, including the only one that has been approved by LPC since designation, PHNDC recommends that the extension be no deeper than 18.75 feet, which is the depth that the commission approved previously. We further recommend the facing of the extension be brick to match the western wall of the building. We also agree with CB8's suggestion that we would prefer the door at the basement level to be centered between double hung windows on either side. Since there are no other rooftops in the row of, there are no other rooftops additions in the row of houses on this block, PSNDC recommends that the rooftop addition be removed, or at the very least that it be made smaller or set back further so that it's not visible from the public thoroughfare. The rooftop mock-up has been modified to minimize visibility other than the railing from Park Place. However, it does not appear that the application plans have been
Sorry, if you could please
modified.
summarize the remainder of your testimony.
Yeah,
You have 3
that's
minutes.
it. It doesn't appear that the application plans have been so modified, and we question whether the final addition will in fact be visible from Park Place.
Thank you for your
Thank
testimony.
you for considering our testimony.
Thank you. If any other members of the public joining us via Zoom would like to offer testimony, please use the raise hand function. All right, seeing none, I will note that Brooklyn Community Board 8 does not approve the project as presented, asking that the rooftop addition be removed or visibly reduced, that the depth of the rear extension be capped at 18 feet 9 inches, the maximum previously approved on the block, and that the cladding of the rear extension be brick rather than stucco.
All right, thank you. So Tom, would you like to respond to the comments?
Sure. We, subsequent to meeting with the community groups, as well as the community board, our original presentation to them, the penthouse was visible. There was some portion of that southwestern corner, probably about a foot in height, that was visible, and we amended that. I'm quite sure that the community board saw that revised presentation, but I'm not sure that the community groups did. Again, I would reiterate that the previously approved depths of extensions by LPC are certainly within the block, but I think there should be I would hope that there be some acknowledgement about the height, the actual volume of these things. We're making an effort to lower the height of this to what's essentially the height of the yard fences, and that this would somehow allow us to push into what is a really large yard that I don't think we're negatively impacting. As far as brick face on the extension, I think, at that end wall, it certainly would be fine. I question whether at the sides it's of any consequence. And again, we're willing to of course, move the rail that seems to be visible in a small way to be completely invisible. And we're quite certain at the penthouse at this point, you cannot see anything.
Thank you. All right, commissioners, any final questions on this one? All right, let's move to our discussion. Commissioner Lutfi, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu, would you second that motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so this is for a one-story rear yard addition and a one-story setback rooftop addition. And with respect to the rooftop addition, we are reviewing this largely for the question of whether the cumulative effect of a rear yard addition and a rooftop addition overwhelms the building. It otherwise, I think, meets the rules for, or at least is consistent with other rooftop additions we've approved in its terms of its visibility. It's just that one very narrow oblique view where you catch the top of the railing, as I understood it. And then we're looking at the rear yard addition, which is only one story and below the historic oriel, which is a feature found throughout the row. And this is, as the applicant presented, these are unusually deep lots. They're 131 feet deep. And so at the end of the row with a 23-foot deep addition, the remainder of the rear yard is almost 55 feet still. So that's something I think we can consider within this block. And we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you like to start?
Yeah, I think this is a relatively easy project. I think it's appropriate, it's thoughtfully done, it's minimally visible, and so I can approve it.
Commissioner Chen?
Given how deep the lot is, and it's exceeding the normal standard of the rear yard requirements, I agree with Commissioner Ginsburg that this is a fairly straightforward and can find it appropriate.
Vice Chair Bland?
I know these blocks very well. They are extraordinarily deep, and therefore I think this is not out of line at all, and I can accept it as appropriate.
Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I think the rooftop is appropriate as long as it's not visible, and the rear yard, although it's larger than usual, I think because of it being sunken in effect and in a very large rear yard is acceptable.
Commissioner Lutfi?
Yeah, I think the applicant did some very smart things, depressing that addition. The applicant's very fortunate that the lot's so deep so that I think it can accommodate this, the size of the addition. And, there's no visibility except for that on the roof, setback. You don't see the, compressor, the color makes sense. If others think that it makes sense to, completely eliminate visibility of the railing, I'm fine with that. Otherwise, I'm fine with it.
Okay. Commissioner Chu?
I think it's appropriate.
Commissioner Master?
Yeah, I think that the rooftop addition is fine, and I think that the rear addition is fine. It's the last house on the row, and I think that since it's only one story, I think it's perfectly appropriate.
And Commissioner Jefferson?
Okay.
All right, so I think we're all in agreement. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make the motion?
With regards to LPC 25-05485, 273 Park Place, Prospect Heights Historic District. A Renaissance Revival, Romanesque Revival style row house designed by William H. Reynolds and built in circa 1898. Application is to construct a rooftop and rear yard addition, modify a bay window and relocate a stained glass window. I note that the building style, materials, details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Prospect Heights Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the work will not alter or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the proposed rear yard addition will only engage with the underside of the oriel window and will not otherwise alter or detract from the significant architectural feature, and only a limited amount of modern material will be removed below the double hung windows to enlarge the opening for a door at the historic oriel window. That the depth and height of the rear yard addition will be in keeping with other rear yard additions found within the block and will not overwhelm the neighboring buildings or diminish the central green space. That only a limited portion of the rear yard addition will be visible from an oblique angle through a service alley. That the rooftop addition will be set back from the front and rear yard, thereby retaining a sense of the building's original massing, and will not be visible from public thoroughfares. that the design and materiality of the rear yard and rooftop addition featuring gray finished stucco cladding and punched windows and doors openings will be in keeping with the aspects of the rear yard and rooftop addition within the historic district, and that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building in the Prospect Heights Historic District.
Commissioner Chen, would you second that motion?
Second.
Mark?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Chu.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson. Commissioner Lutfi. Commissioner Master.
Aye.
9 in favor and none opposed. The motion passes.
All right, that's approved. Thank you. And we'll move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 8. LPC 25-03997, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 5181, lot 26, 482 East 18th Street in the Ditmas Park Historic District. This is a colonial revival style freestanding house designed by Benjamin Dreisler and built in 1899. The application is to install skylights on the roof.
Hello, my name is Frederick Tang. I'm the architect presenting this proposal for skylights. Sorry, let me just get this up. This project is in the Ditmas Park Historic District, and we're right in the middle here at 482 East 18th Street. The next couple of slides show other homes along the street that have skylights. We are at 482. The house directly to the north at 476 East 18th has 4 skylights on the roof. Further down on 18th Street at 500 East 18th, this house has 2 skylights on the roof. The house at 554 East 18th Street also has 2 skylights on the roof. And here are images from the street of our project showing a couple of the proposed skylights here in orange. And then we also have a photorealistic rendering of it because the skylight frame is in dark gray, which matches the roof color. We're proposing 5 skylights overall. 4 of them are operable. 1 of them is fixed. All of them are 2'6" by 3'10" in size. Here's a view from the northeast corner of the house. Again, skylights shown in orange, and then on the right, a photorealistic rendering of it. This is a close-up of it so that you can understand the scale. Here's a view from the southeast, looking at the 2 visible from the southeast side, again in orange and photorealistically on the right. And then zoomed in so you can understand the scale. We are proposing one on the very back of the house, which is visible through the driveway of the street just behind East 18th Street. This is shown in orange and photorealistically. And this is a view through the driveway at East 17th Street, where you can sort of see a glimmer of it just past the roof line of the house on East 17th. Zoomed in here. Here are a couple of the street views of the other homes on East 18th Street that have skylights. This is our house right here, and then directly to the north is the skylight visible from on 476 East 18th. And here's the visible skylight at 500 East 18th. And the 2 visible skylights at 554 East 18th Street. Here are elevations, the front elevation, which is the east one, and the side at the north. And then the rear elevation and the south side elevation as well. Here are structural framing diagrams for the 5 proposed skylights. And that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, commissioners? All right, and I'll note that there is no one in the hearing room to testify, so I'll turn it to Stephen to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. Anyone joining us via Zoom, please use the raise hand function. Lucy Levine, you will be next to speak.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds these skylights appropriate because they do not damage or remove any historic fabric. As a point of information, we were interested to know whether the skylights the applicant showed as precedents were approved by the Commission or installed prior to designation. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else joining us via Zoom who would like to testify, please use the raise hand function. All right, I will note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 14 holds a policy that they do not hold public hearings on LPC items unless requested to do so by the neighborhood association. And in this case, the Ditmas Park Association determined that a hearing on the matter was unnecessary.
Maybe. Okay. Any final questions, commissioners? All right, let's close the hearing and begin our discussion. Commissioner Master, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson, would you
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we'll begin our discussion on this one for 5 skylights in this district with these very large houses that have very picturesque roofs with multiple gables. And as we've seen in the presentation, these spaces are usable, and many of the other houses have installed skylights similarly. And so you'll see these from the oblique views over the front, and the one at the rear is very minimally visible through a driveway. Commissioner Chen, would you like to start this one?
Yeah, this is so straightforward. That's, there's not much to comment. I think this is totally appropriate.
Vice Chair Bland?
As I always like to say, and probably frustrating my fellow colleagues by saying it so often, it's not that you can see something on a roof. It's what you see, and does it detract in any way from an appreciation of the building? And in this case, it does not, for me, at all detract, and the neighbors have them, and I think this is fairly standard and very appropriate.
Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I don't think it detracts, and it's a typical feature of, the buildings in the similar buildings in this district, so it's fine.
Okay, does everybody agree? Anyone want to add anything? Yes, Commissioner Lutfi.
It's just a smart thing to do. I mean, if you look at the height of these roofs, and the owners of these homes are trying to make this space usable. So in order to do that, they want to get light in, and I completely support that.
I'll also add that there are 5, but we never see more than 2.
Yeah.
At any time.
So that makes it.
That's true. Good point. Thank you. Okay, so I think we can make a motion to approve it. Commissioner Chen?
And the fact that they're so symmetrical.
Yes.
Yes. In the matter of LPC 25-03997, 482 East 18th Street, Ditmas Park Historic District. The application is to install skylights on the roof. Noting the building's style, scale, materials and details among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the historic district. I recommend approval, finding that presence of skylights on a pitched roof is a common feature of other single-family houses found in this historic district, that the dark color of the skylight frames will blend with the color of the roof shingles, that the presence of a single skylight on 5 separate roof slopes will not overwhelm this complex roofscapes, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building of the historic district.
Thank you. And Vice Chair Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
Mark, will you?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Right.
Commissioner Ginsburg, Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, that's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to break for lunch, and we will return at 1:40 and pick up on our agenda with item number 9. And we'll ask all members of the public who are in the Zoom meeting and wish to return to voluntarily exit at this time so that you don't experience technical difficulties should we have to remove you. And you, so we'll see everybody at 1:40.